Doobie doobie doo wop ba ba. Doo wop ba 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 ba. Doo doo doo. Just waiting on Rockfin any day now. Rockfin any day now. That was funny.
I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I do want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sundays. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an epic show tonight. Tonight's theme is Turned Down for What? And how can you not? Of course, with the information that we have coming out today about Jeffrey Epstein, I have a special guest who is going to join me to give us a little bit of background info here about Epstein in regards to foreign policy. And then we're also going to show you this vote that took place today. So really quickly, I do want to go ahead and show you that thumbnail. Want to make sure I stay on course here. We will be starting the documentary screening at 8:15 p.m. We'll get through the news stories. We'll go into that, and then we'll do call in after the show. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are discussing, of course, the Epstein chaos, this Epstein vote that took place today. We're going to get into a little bit of Epstein's foreign policy meddling here. We're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss, this is an interesting story. I'm not sure a lot of people know about this, but this was just recently reported. Apparently, a call has gone out that Hakeem Jeffries is not supposed to have a challenger. AOC is now on record. This is according to Axios, that she does not believe that Hakeem Jeffries should be challenged. We're going to get into that, and I want to get your opinions about it, ladies and gents. We're also going to discuss, if you haven't heard about this, Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports is whining and crying on CBS this morning. Apparently, the guy who has come after everybody else and said, take a joke, cannot take it when somebody comes after him. So we're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss this story about the DoorDash delivery girl just went crazy. It just turned left. She has now been fired. We're going to get into that story. And last but not least, of course, we're going to do the documentary watch party here tonight. And then afterwards, we will have call in after the show. So I do not want to keep our guest waiting. We're going to get started with this Epstein story here. He is a journalist. His name is Wakas, and I want to go ahead and bring him in. Hello. Thank you so much for coming on.
Hi. Thank you, Sabrina, for having me.
Really, really appreciate it. We got to get into this, Wakas, because I want to show everybody something that I saw. I have been talking a lot, of course, about Jeffrey Epstein and his connection to Israel, being an agent of Mossad. However, something came through that I did not anticipate, and that is in regards to Pakistan. So shout out to Solomon. He shared this information. One of the emails that was leaked about Jeffrey Epstein, new emails from Jeffrey Epstein dated July 2018, reveal him calling former Pakistan PM Imran Khan a major threat to peace, worse than leaders like Erdogan, Khamenei, Xi, or Putin, and labeling him really bad news. And he put a copy of that email here. So he saw Imran Khan as a threat to peace. For people who are not aware, Imran Khan is imprisoned. He was arrested. Now, one of the things I did know, Wakas, is that there seemed to be U.S. involvement around his arrest. And one of those reasons had to do with the fact that he did not want to take a position with the Russia-Ukraine war. He wanted to remain neutral. Imran Khan had put out a video telling his supporters to fight back, like not to accept what was happening. And then, of course, later on, he was arrested. Now we see this connection here with Jeffrey Epstein and some involvement here about Imran Khan, where he was telling people that he was a threat to peace. Let's hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this is a story I've been following for 3 years now, and it is so underreported in the US mainstream media. 250 million Pakistanis lost their democracy. They have been suffering for 3 years under a dictatorship, all because of this story that unfolded. So Jeffrey Epstein is in this email that you just showed. He's most likely talking to Steve Bannon. And this is during the Trump administration in 2018. So this person on the other side is most likely Steve Bannon, because if you look at the conversation, they're talking something about Koch brothers, and Steve Bannon had said something about them just 2 days earlier about like them putting their weight behind Trump, and he had issued an ultimatum. So this is what we can see. At that time, during Trump administration, Trump needed Imran Khan for the negotiations that were happening at that time with the Taliban for the withdrawal from Afghanistan. Trump, one of his campaign promises was withdrawing from Afghanistan. So he's talking to Imran Khan, and he's talking to Pakistan, having negotiations with Qatar, getting access to the Taliban. So the relationship at that time between Imran Khan and Trump is okay. But as you can see, at this time, Epstein is trying to spread this sentiment. See, nothing Epstein does is random. As we have found out, and as Dropsite News has reported for the past few weeks, half a dozen stories right now that have shown that Epstein was working closely with the Israeli state, and he had deep connections with the Mossad and the intelligence people and billionaires and people who run the government, people who run policies, who may not even be part of the government. Epstein was that kind of person. He was above and beyond Mossad. He was the state itself. So this was like some kind of this looming figure telling Steve Bannon that this person is an undesirable. So this was long before Ukraine war started, long before Imran Khan took that position. So Imran Khan has a good relationship with Trump. Trump goes away. Afghan war withdrawal bleeds into the Biden administration. Biden comes over, but Biden does not like Khan, because as soon as this withdrawal happens, and American forces are pretty humiliated the way the withdrawal happens, the scenes that we saw at the end of it, we saw that it was like a really badly managed, right? So as Biden administration wants to save face here, they asked Imran Khan in a very public interview if they would allow them to have military bases in Pakistan. Imran Khan says no. No military bases in Pakistan for a while.
Wait, so just 1 second. The U.S. government wanted to have U.S. military bases in Pakistan?
Yes, to keep an eye on Afghanistan. They call them over the horizon bases, so they could control Afghan airspace. This was one of the ideas floated as, withdrawal happened, and there was a really bad sentiment in America. So to counteract that sentiment, this idea was floated that we're not leaving forever. We're still there. We're going to have military bases in Pakistan, and we're going to take care of Afghanistan from those bases. This was the idea floated at that time. And Imran Khan shut it down immediately. There's an interview with this Axios reporter, and he says in that interview, he says absolutely not to military bases. So that is shut. Then eventually in 2022, Ukraine war starts. And Ukraine war starts, the day the Ukraine war starts, Imran Khan was due to visit Russia on that day. And he finds out, like, imagine waking up in the morning, you have a Russia visit today, and you find out that the Ukraine war has started. And he asks his military chief, he asks his diplomats if he should go or not. And they all say that this visit has been in the planning for years, actually. And such a state-level visit from Pakistan to Russia has not happened. We need cheaper oil that Russia is selling, so you should go. And he goes. He wants to have an independent foreign policy. He does not take the pressure from the US that asks him not to go. So he goes there. And the US is really angry. EU is really angry. EU diplomats write a letter, a very public letter, open letter, saying that Imran Khan must condemn Russia. And he says no. He says, are we your, in a very public gathering, he says, are we your slaves? We do not follow your commands. We will have an independent foreign policy. EU is really mad at him at this point. So this Secretary of the Assistant to the Secretary of the State, Donald Lu, for South and Central Asia. This is a post in State Department. This person meets with the Pakistani ambassador to United States. And in that meeting, he says that the Pakistani government should remove Imran Khan. And the Pakistani military, basically signaling Pakistani military to remove this guy. Within 1 month, Imran Khan is removed from its office. There was a vote of no confidence. The military supports it. The military basically removes Imran Khan. And after that, there's a huge string of human rights violations that happen in Pakistan, and nobody really cares about them. The US government doesn't say anything, even when pressed in State Department briefings during the Biden administration, even during the presidential briefings. Journalists push this. Are you going to say something about Pakistan? And they say nothing about Pakistan. They say everything in Pakistan is okay, and they say nothing about it. Hundreds of people have been killed in Pakistan during this process. Thousands have been arrested. Imran Khan himself has been in jail for 2 years in crazy cases. Right now, he and his wife are in jail for a case that, if I tell you about, you would be so shocked. The case is that he married his wife at the wrong time. That's the case against him, against both of them. That there were supposed to be a specific number of periods, like menstrual cycles, that needed to be passed before they could both marry. And since that period did not pass, their marriage is illegal, and that is why that woman is in jail. Imagine this case. A woman's menstrual cycles were discussed in court and were reported by the Pakistani media. No international media and these so many organizations spoke about this massive human rights violation that happened in Pakistan. All because the US establishment was behind it. It supported it. There were 2 reports in February 2024. There were 2 reports that were done on the Pakistani elections. In February 2024, finally, the military decided to hold elections in Pakistan with Imran Khan in jail. They judicially rigged it. They basically disbanded Imran Khan's party, the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. They destroyed it. They still held the election. And in Pakistani elections, you have to put your stamp on an electoral symbol. So each party has a symbol, because a lot of people are not educated there. They put stamps on symbol instead of names, written names, because people are illiterate. So the Imran Khan's party symbol was removed from the ballot, and all of his candidates were assigned random symbols. And people, the brave people of Pakistan, figured out those symbols, what they were, and went and voted for those candidates and foiled the Pakistani military. And then Pakistani military got so desperate that in one night, they just overwrote those results and they put on their own parliament inside.
But I have to say, like, does Israel see Pakistan as a problem, meaning that Pakistan is not going to go along with what they want? Because this is the first time. That's what I was saying. Like, for those who did not see, let me just bring this up here as well. This was the part that was really shocking to me. Like I said, there's a lot of talk about Epstein and Israel, which we are all familiar with. But this was the very first time I saw Epstein having some type of involvement with Pakistan. So you really did have this guy who, yes, was an agent. It says right here, just to read this to everybody, message, hasn't pointed out assassinations to overthrow governments, coup funding, Imran Khan in Pakistan, a much greater threat to peace than Erdogan. He's talking about Erdogan from Turkey, Khamenei, Xi, or Putin. So he was already putting the call out back in 2018 that this is someone that they needed to deal with. He saw him as a threat because this is the key thing, right? Like they say peace, but actually Imran Khan did want peace. But what they're talking about is peace on Israel terms, which means that you have to go along with the greater Israel agenda.
Yeah, basically, so what happens next is really interesting. Once these Pakistani elections are rigged and then this new government installed, it starts making these decisions that are not popular with the Pakistani population at all. One of these major decisions is recognizing Israel and signing the Abraham Accords. Pakistani government is now moving towards signing the Abraham Accords. Yesterday, the Pakistani state voted yes on this Security Council vote that effectively gives away the custody of Gaza to Israel and the United States. That has been condemned by various human rights organizations and activists as like really bad for people of Gaza. And the Pakistani government has been on board. Not just that, within Pakistan, when Pakistani people started protesting for Palestine and Gaza, they were shot at. The Pakistani military shot at protesters protesting for Gaza, not for Imran Khan, not for anything else. They were talking about Gaza, and the Pakistani military, Pakistani police shot at them. This has never happened in Pakistani history. This government that has come is completely opposed to what Pakistani policy has been for the past 70 years. That Pakistan's founding father laid down within Pakistani foundation that they said that Palestine must never be, Israel must never be recognized till Palestinian people have their right to self-determination, till they have their own state. A two-state solution, whatever it will have to be with the assent of the people of Palestine. This is Pakistan's official policy position, and that has been reversed. So if you look at this from 2018, Jeffrey Epstein recognized that this person was not going to be a person who's going to let that happen, and they had to remove this person through series of maneuvers that eventually brought Pakistan to a stage in this. If you look at events day to day or month to month or even year to year, you might not see it. But if you step back and take a look at the whole thing in 3 years, Jeffrey Epstein telling Steve Bannon that this is a bad guy, and eventually this bad guy ending up in jail, and what ends up replacing him is a pro-Israel government that is going to today send people to Gaza under the authority of Israel, the IDF. This effectively has happened.
And a lot of these leaders that the U.S. government has overthrown are leaders that will not go along with Israel's greater agenda here, this greater Israel project. So, for example, I was just telling everybody about what's happening right now in Mexico, and a similar situation. Let's remember Claudia Sheinbaum did not come out in support of Israel. Right. She had on a keffiyeh, et cetera. Like she was supporting the Palestinians in Gaza. And now we see what's happening in Mexico. Again, we have a color revolution that's happening in Mexico. A lot of these protests are funded by the West and Western billionaires. So there's just a lot of this going on. And I want people to just think about a lot of these leaders that the U.S. government has overthrown. Same thing with Maduro. Venezuela does not want to go along with this greater Israel project and does not want to be an ally to Israel. So what are they doing? They're using the drug trade to say, well, it's because of drugs. We got to go take them out. They'll come up with different reasons. They'll come up with different excuses. But a lot of this always goes back to Israel. This is how powerful Jeffrey Epstein was. And that points me to what happened today. I do want to bring this in, because Congress did vote today whether or not to release those files. Before that vote happened, Marjorie Taylor Greene issued a few words. I want to show you guys what Jeffrey Epstein's brother said he think is going to happen with those files. But first and foremost, before people forget what a lot of this is about, not all of it, there was an ad that was made by some of the victims. I want people to see this really quickly, because I want you to think about this for the people who are trying to pretend like this isn't an issue all of a sudden.
I suffered so much pain.
So much pain.
So much pain.
I suffered so much pain. I was 14 years old.
I was 16 years old.
I was 16.
17.
14 years old.
This is me.
This was me.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
This is me when I met Jeffrey Epstein.
There are about 1,000 of us.
It's time to bring the secrets out of the shadows. It's time to shine a light into the darkness.
Yeah. This is what I was saying, right? Like, this was another thing that Jeffrey Epstein did on the side. But also to go along with the foreign policy, like Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just trafficking people. He was also making key foreign policy decisions that ultimately impacted Israel and, of course, the United States government. So that brings me to what his brother said. And I want to get your take on this, Wakas. They interviewed Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, on News Nation earlier this morning. I want you guys to hear what his brother said is going to happen to those files.
What I do want to talk about is I've been recently told the reason they're going to be releasing these things and the reason for the flip is that they're sanitizing these files. There's a facility in Winchester, Virginia, where they're scrubbing the files to take Republican names out of it. That's what I was told by a pretty good source.
Wakas, what's your take on that? Jeffrey Epstein's brother said they are scrubbing those files to take names out.
Yeah, definitely. They have to do that. They're going to do that. There's going to be a massive amount of redactions in there. No matter what they do, still there's going to be some information in that. Even these files that these House Oversight Committee released, they're massively redacted. And we don't really know how the choices that they've made, which pages to release, which emails to release. It all seems very, orchestrated, even though no matter what they release, no matter what little amount of information they release, it shines the light on this mysterious thing that sounds like a conspiracy theory had you not seen these documents. Here's this one man. He's not alone. He is this is an individual that has power of a state. And he has these connections. He's making deals with Syria. He's connecting Putin with the Israeli government over Syria. He's making gas deals in Mongolia. He's making cyber deals with Ehud Barak. He has at his disposal hundreds of millions of dollars. He is texting Congress women and senators while they're sitting inside hearing, and they are taking direct dictation from him. If you look at that video from the Washington Post, it is amazing. This great piece of journalism WAPO has done, overlaid the timestamps from the text that he's been sending during a congressional hearing over the video. It is something worth watching.
Stacey Plaskett. He was texting Stacey Plaskett, who's a delegate. She represents the Virgin Islands, which is where a lot of this took place. But he was texting her while she was in Congress. Like, we are talking about serious power and control here. And this is just insane that this guy, who obviously was not a politician at all, was texting a member of Congress while they were in a hearing.
Yeah, who were asking directions from Epstein. They're not like just chit-chatting about random things. If they were like texting about like the best pizza in DC, we would still be shocked that they had such a close relationship. But they're texting right about congressional business and taking instructions from a nobody, sexual deviant who's been convicted. So imagine this happening. And his control over his infiltration into these things is massive. Larry Summers, untouchable completely. He still decided that he's going to teach at Harvard, and he's taking instructions. He's taking dating advice from this convicted sex offender after his conviction.
That's right. And of course, Congressman Mike Johnson is also protecting Jeffrey Epstein. This is what he said earlier today.
All right. Number 5, national security concerns, okay? The discharge requires the Attorney General to release within 30 days, quote, classified information to the maximum extent possible. This ignores the principle that declassification should always rest, and always has rested, with the agency that originated the intelligence. Why? So that they can protect their critical sources and methods. It is incredibly dangerous to demand that officials or employees of the DOJ declassify materials that originated in other agencies, in intelligence agencies.
So he's saying that they have to redact the information because they have to protect people that are part of other intelligence agencies. But honestly, he's talking about Israel. That's what he's talking about. It's so obvious. This is insane.
But like, if the emails have information that is related to intelligence agencies, why do this private person who has no relationship, according to them, have relationship with an intelligence agency, have information in them that is related to intelligence agencies? That is shocking. These are not like CIA official documents that they're going to release that would expose their methods and people and sources. These are Epstein's files. This is property and intellectual output of Jeffrey Epstein, the convicted sex offender. And I don't know what kind of state secrets are in there and why. That's the most important thing to know. Why are state secrets inside this private man's estate?
And of course, also, we have to remember, these are just the emails that have been leaked, the ones that we've seen. There are thousands and thousands of emails. So we've only seen some of them, not even, half of them. And then there's this pressure also that was put on people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Thomas Massie, who collaborated with Ro Khanna. This was a bipartisanship effort, collaborated with him to get some kind of justice here for the victims. I want you guys to hear what Marjorie Taylor Greene said earlier today. I have 2 clips to show you here.
Congresswoman Greene, you raised the question of whether or not the Justice Department will actually release these files. Do you take the president at his word when he says he's going to sign this bill? And do you have confidence that these files will actually be released?
I only take people's actions seriously. No longer words.
And what do you think the president's actions?
And I'll tell you, because I wasn't a Johnny-come-lately to the MAGA train. I was day one 2015. And there's a big difference in those Americans and those that decided to support President Trump later on. And I'll tell you right now, this has been one of the most destructive things to MAGA is watch.
Yeah, so that's one part there where she said it was destructive. And then this one here where she speaks very directly here to Donald Trump.
I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything, but I fought for him for the policies and for America first. And he called me a traitor for standing with these women and refusing to take my name off the discharge petition. Let me tell you what a traitor is. A traitor is an American that serves foreign countries and themselves. A patriot is an American that serves the United States of America and Americans like the women standing behind me. And I want to tell you that this only became possible today because the American people whom we serve as representatives here in Congress demanded that this vote happen and they put more pressure on every single elected politician in this city than has ever been put on them. And today you are going to see probably a unanimous vote in the House to release the Epstein files. But the real fight will happen after that.
Wanted to get your take on that, Wakas, that Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't stand down and stood by like her principles here, even though Donald Trump obviously threw threats her way. He tried to get Lauren Boebert to not vote in that direction. And then eventually, for those who don't know, Donald Trump did come forward and say, okay, Republicans, you can go ahead and vote for the Epstein files, right? It's just very weird. But he also knows what we know, which is that those files are going to be redacted. So I'm pretty sure he already gave them the heads up to pull any information out that involves him.
Yeah, definitely. And Marjorie Taylor Greene's fight might be like, it might have been initiated, I think, personally, because they didn't let her run for Senate. And even though she wanted to, and because she's not pro-Israel. And that is why she's really mad that this pro-Israel lobby has stopped took her from what was rightfully hers. But this fight is also pretty symbolic. If she wins this fight, that means this pro-Israel lobby is not strong enough to resist one senator or one seat. And then that would open the dams. Then they won't be able to control it. And Trump took the side of the pro-Israel lobby, took the side of a foreign government over a loyal Trump supporter. And that does send a signal out to so many Trump supporters that your government is controlled, like actual what they call American patriots are being denied these positions on behalf of a foreign government. That does not look well. There's a real crisis within the Republican Party, and it's moving into an avalanche. You see Massey standing with her and more people joining in, and the votes. Nobody's going to, now that these positions are clear, it would be a very risky career-wise as a politician to vote against releasing Epstein files. You're going to be primary. There's like some winds of revolution going on in American politics. You can feel it, even though it's slow. There's something moving, and it's happening.
And it moved because here's the vote. For those who have not seen, Rokana shared this: 427-1 is a landslide for survivors. The Senate should pass my and Thomas Massie bill quickly and send it to Donald Trump's desk. So now it goes on to the Senate again, 427.
Imagine this one person who did not vote. Here you can see his profile. But imagine how bad for your career it would be as a senator to vote no on this sexual convicts vote. This vote, it would be undefendable. So I don't think it's going to get blocked in the Senate either. It's going to pass through, and then it will be on Trump's table, and then even Trump would be helpless against it. You see, this is the thing that he's been trying to avoid. They've been trying to avoid Trump having to sign on something that is his own, could intimidate himself.
Yeah, it's a big one. And Thomas Massie also went on the record saying this, that the Senate needs to move forward with this. I wanted to play this as well.
What's the impact if the Senate does in fact change this bill?
They're part of the cover-up. And these bozos here, they pretend like, okay, now we're ready to pull the Band-Aid off after 5 months of shooting themselves in the foot. Politically and morally, they're ready to pull the Band-Aid off. But the reality is, Speaker Johnson's press conference shows that he is unrepentant. They have a backup plan, and I think it's going to work poorly for them, by the way. By the time they get done with trying to cover up by having these other investigations or having amendments in the Senate, they're just going to make more people complicit. It takes somebody to offer those amendments, and then they're going to have votes on those amendments. And I would encourage them to pass this bill as is, put it on the president's desk. It's got protections to prevent the release of child pornography. That's a lie. The speaker, go read the bills, guys. It's right in there. It's got protections.
Yeah. So this is very, guys, they're going to change it. They're going to redact information, of course. But again, everybody's watching them now. And I think what people need to take away from this is what Wakas was pointing out, is that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just involved when it concerns Israel, but also when it concerns Pakistan as well. And that's the smoking gun. And it makes you wonder, what other countries was he involved with?
Syria, Russia, Mongolia. He was doing deals there. What country was not involved? And he had his eyes everywhere. He was a international level diplomat and an agent for Ehud Barak. He was making really crazy deals. He was a diplomat in some senses. I would even say that this whole sexual part of what he was is a very small, it's like a supporting wing of what he was. It was just his entertainment. Like, this is how he would, it wasn't even like primarily for blackmailing. Blackmailing could have been a side effect of it, but it was for entertainment and making connections with these extremely rich people, mostly men. And he would use this, he would use his island, he would use his private jets to make these deals. That was his primary business.
That's right. All right, Wakas, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Wakas. He's a journalist and gave us a pretty shocking update there. Again, I was not aware that Jeffrey Epstein was also involved when it comes to Pakistan. You know, these are the things that we're finding out now. Like, there's just so much information that is coming out. So we're going to keep the show going, guys, because I do want to make sure I start that documentary on time, because I don't want to keep people here all night. We will do call in after the show. So stay tuned for that as well. Tonight's theme is Turned Down for What? Turned down for what? And I think you'll see that with tonight's stories. If you have not had a chance to do so, ladies and gentlemen, do me a solid and smash that like button. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. Let's move on to the next story. This is a shocking one, I think, for a lot of people. It is very clear to me that a call went out. A call went out within the Democratic Party, and that call was that Hakeem Jeffries should not face a challenger, that no one should run against Hakeem Jeffries. I told you guys a couple days ago that Zoran said he would not endorse this candidate named Chi Ose, would not endorse him because he said that it could hurt what he's trying to get accomplished in New York City. Now we are seeing that AOC has come forward and said that Hakeem Jeffries should not receive a challenge. Let's take a look at this, ladies and gentlemen. This is wild. This is wild. We're talking about AIPAC Shakur here. AIPAC Shakur. Exclusive. AOC says Jeffries' primary challenge, not a good idea. So this is the smoking gun that dropped. A lot of people are like, what the hell is going on? So let's go ahead and get into this. AOC signaled in an interview with Axios on Monday that she would not support New York City Council member Chi Ose in a primary challenge against House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Why it matters. AOC is one of several high-profile progressives distancing from Ose's potential run, arguing that it is a distraction from New York City Mayor's-elect Zoran Mondami's victory. Let's pause here for just a second. What the hell is going on? Hakeem Jeffries takes a lot of money from AIPAC. We're in the millions with Hakeem Jeffries, the money that he takes from AIPAC. And what is really strange to me, and you guys let me know how you feel, okay? What's really weird to me is that some of the same politicians that said that Chuck Schumer needs to resign or Chuck Schumer needs to have a challenger, which AOC is one of those ones that said, well, if he's not leading, then he needs to go. Some of those same politicians don't want Hakeem Jeffries to have a challenge. Hakeem Jeffries takes just as much money from AIPAC as Chuck Schumer. Hakeem Jeffries is pro-Israel, not pro-Gaza. Hakeem Jeffries, a lot of people talk about Richie Torres. Hakeem Jeffries is just as bad when it comes to Israel. So this takes me back to that force the vote moment where, again, as Bree had said on The Hill Rising when she was co-hosting with Robbie Suave, that a call went out and told those politicians not to participate in the Force the Vote town hall and also not to force the vote. So everybody needs to pay attention to what is happening here. You cannot have it one way for Chuck Schumer and have it another way for Hakeem Jeffries. Let's go on a little bit more here in this article. Progressive Change Campaign Committee head Adam Green told Politico it is not the right moment to launch a primary challenge against Hakeem Jeffries. Not the right moment. We continue to hear this. Mondami also appeared to discourage his fellow Democratic Socialists of America member on Monday. I believe that there are many ways right here in New York City, both to deliver on affordability agenda and take on authoritarian administration in the White House. What she's saying, AOC told Axios during a brief interview at the U.S. Capitol that she was not aware that Osei was challenging Jeffries. I don't believe that. Here's the thing, and I'll show you in just a second. I don't believe that. That's been all over social media, and that was before he filed the paperwork. He has now filed the paperwork. It was everywhere that this guy was planning to run against Hakeem Jeffries. And also, Hakeem Jeffries also has a challenger. I'm going to bring this up in just a second because there's something weird going on. And everybody needs to use their spidey senses for just a second. Hakeem Jeffries votes in favor of Israel. Hakeem Jeffries still doesn't call what's happening in Gaza genocide. Hakeem Jeffries takes all this money from AIPAC. Hakeem Jeffries is in the pocket of big money, big donors. How is that any different from Chuck Schumer? So why does Hakeem get a pass? Like, you can't say, and this is the thing, you can't say we're not going to support people that take money from AIPAC, but we'll give Hakeem a pass. You can't put out the call that Richie Torres needs to go, Chuck Schumer needs to go, but we're going to give Hakeem a pass. So here's what I think is going on, folks. We'll come back to this. Here's what I think is going on. I would not be surprised if Hakeem Jeffries or someone from his staff have already approached certain politicians in the House, in the Democratic Party, and told them, you know, AOC, if you want to run for Chuck Schumer's seat, I'll endorse you as long as you don't support a challenge against me. You know, AOC, if you're considering that presidential run in 2028, I get behind you and support you for that, as long as you don't support a challenge to my seat. These are backroom deals, and it's not okay, and everybody needs to call it out. It's just, this is insane. That's how it works, though. They make these agreements behind the scenes, like, you back me, I back you. You scratch my back, I scratch your back. There's a lot of that in politics. It goes on a little bit more here to say, AOC told, oh, we did that part, sorry. But she added, I certainly don't think a primary challenge to the leader is a good idea right now. So here we go again with the now is not the right time. And many of us have heard this all our lives. Now is not the right time. AOC demurred on other races, declining to weigh in on whether she would support New York City Comptroller Brad Lander if he runs against Representative Dan Goldman. Now let's get into Osei. Osei filed paperwork with the FEC on Monday to run for Jeffries' district, which covers portions of Brooklyn. He said in a statement he's exploring a run because Democratic leadership is not only failing to effectively fight back against Donald Trump, they have also failed to deliver a vision that we can all believe in. So something else I want to add here, when he talks about a vision and something we all believe in. I could have sworn just a month or so ago, people were calling for new leadership out there, new faces, more younger people. Zoran Mondami won Hakeem Jeffries' district. Chi Osei is likely to have a similar platform. This doesn't make any sense that they're telling people, no, I'm not going to support a primary challenge to Hakeem Jeffries. No, you guys should not run against Hakeem. Why does Hakeem get a pass? Everyone start asking that question because he's just as corrupt. Nina Turner is calling it out. Nina Turner said, you cannot support progress and support Representative Jeffries, one or the other. She said another one here. The leader of the Democratic Party in the House should be unwavering on labor rights. This is what folding looks like. People are tired of this. And she's referring to this article here that says Hakeem Jeffries stalls effort to restore federal workers' bargaining rights. It says here Representatives Adelita and Mike Lawler were poised to sign a discharge petition, to force a floor vote before the House Minority Leader stepped in. This is insane. So this isn't even just about Gaza. This is also about labor. And this is who they believe should not face a challenge. Something is happening. So something is happening here. So it's not okay. Now, let me tell you about this part. Chi Osei, Gen Z activist and council member in Brooklyn, has filed paperwork to run in the 2026 Democratic primary against the pro-Israel U.S. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. And you would think, and here's the thing, you would think that the progressive wing of the Democratic Party would be excited about this. You would think they would be cheering this guy on. You would think they would get behind them with all the energy that they have. But no, they don't even want him to run. So I know some deals have been made. A call went out. Here's a couple of posts from Chi here. I don't even know what else to say at this point. Shame on every single person who is continuing to allow this genocide to happen. Free fucking Palestine, man. Here's another one. My original tweet. Israel is a terror state. Shame on every single person who is continuing to defend the ongoing genocide of the Palestinian people. You will be remembered poorly in history. Continued prayers for the people of Gaza. Hakeem is one of those people who was continuing to defend Israel. Tonight in the United States of America, we are witnessing a militarized police force funded by NYC taxpayers arresting American students in the name of a foreign country that's carrying out a genocide. This is who they don't want to support. So you can't have it both ways. You can't say we're going to fight back against big money. We're going to take a stand against AIPAC. But then you say Hakeem can stay. Deals have been made, and there's something else that's fishy going on. And I got to show you guys this as well, because everyone's talking about Chi Osei, and I just found it very strange that media is blacking out Vance Bostic. Vance Bostic announced that he was running against Hakeem Jeffries back in July of this year. And they're pretending like he doesn't even exist. And everyone's doing it. This is very weird to me, you guys. You got to start asking some questions here. Ken Klippenstein shared, Chi Osei has officially launched a primary campaign for Hakeem Jeffries' seat. So here's the paperwork. He's filed. But AOC and all the rest of them are letting him know now that he is not going to get their support. They're not going to endorse him because they don't believe that Hakeem Jeffries should face a challenge. You are keeping the corruption in by not supporting Hakeem getting out of there, because Hakeem is corrupt. And I don't want to hear this, well, we can move Hakeem. No, you can't. He was bought and paid for a long time ago. They got him a long time ago. There was a progressive that ran against Hakeem Jeffries back in the day. His name was Charles Barron. He's a Black Panther. Charles Barron was winning that race. Next thing you know, there's a smear against Charles Barron that he's anti-Semitic. Of course, it comes from David Duke, who I believe is an op. And Hakeem Jeffries soars in the polls after that smear. That's how Hakeem got that seat. Otherwise, Charles Barron, who's a member of the Black Panther Party, would have been in that seat. So what the hell is really going on? So everyone's talking about Chi Osei. But they are seriously pretending as though this guy is not running. And this is why I told you guys, this is why I'm registered no party affiliate. Because party games give you party names, party games. Parties like to play games. It's always about, at the end of the day, what's best for the party, not what's best for the district, not what's best for the people. It's about what's best for the party. So Vance Bostic was here a couple of days ago. And I asked him this question because I noticed it then. Don't you think it's strange, Vance, that people are pretending as though you're not running? Listen to this. It was right here. It was reported by the New York Post that he's going to challenge Hakeem Jeffries. And I noticed I didn't see any corporate media cover that there was already somebody running against Hakeem Jeffries, which is you. And so I found that very strange because, again, when I looked at Ballotpedia, you're already there, already listed. What do you think why is this happening? Why are they not writing articles about your challenge against Hakeem?
You know, I think partly it's because I am just a regular person and the system isn't designed for regular people to enter it. So when people do this, I think it's weird, but they should cover everybody that's running. But when people who don't have a following or they don't think is a valuable winner, you know, a lot of it is focused on money too. I don't think that they think that I can raise money. And I think that they put too much pressure onto raising money.
Bingo. That's what it comes down to. They are looking to see who can raise the most money for the party. And I believe that's why they're pretending like he doesn't exist. And I got to tell you guys, like, this one to me, it gives me Bernie vibes. It takes me back to when corporate media was trying to ignore Bernie Sanders and pretend like he wasn't even there. It's taking me back to those days. But I'm seeing this happen with people who supported other candidates that have a similar platform to Vance Bostic. And it's just so weird to me. They don't want to talk about it. This is what Vance said on Twitter. He said, they are big time ignoring this. I have been running since July, from being suppressed on the internet to being ignored by media. This has been an uphill battle trying to make a reach, but none of this will deter me, I think he means, because real change in the system is a top priority. Like, to me, this is wild as hell. And it seems like, to me, behind the scenes, people got together and they decided, well, we're going to get behind this guy even before he had announced he was running, but they're totally ignoring this guy. Vance reached out to me again. For one, Vance reached out to me to come onto this show. And I'm registered no party affiliate. I vote third party. But I didn't tell him no. Vance told me he has reached out to other media and they won't let him come on. They're ignoring him. What the hell is going on? I let him come on, but they won't let him come on. Doesn't that seem weird to you guys? How is that any different than corporate media? So Vance says he's not going to, turn down. He's not going to stop here. He's going to keep going and keep doing what he's doing. And I just feel I don't like this. I don't like when there's like this media blackout, whether you support that candidate or not. It's some fuckery going on around here. So like I said, a call went out that Hakeem Jeffries should not have a challenger. And I don't know who that call came from, but it came from somebody, damn it. And everybody needs to call it out. I would go to the comments right now, but like I said, we're on a time crunch here. So let's go ahead and go to the next story, ladies and gents. All right. Again, we will show the documentary last, ladies and gentlemen. Please smash that like button for me. Thank you. Let's go ahead and go to the next story. This is a doozy. I'm embarrassed that this guy lives within a vicinity of me or is from the Boston area. Dave Portnoy from Barstool Sports has always been an asshole. Like some people are just assholes. He's one of those people. Dave Portnoy has spent a lot of time making crude jokes to other people. Okay, whatever. But Dave Portnoy is now crying and whining like a baby because now his feelings are hurt because somebody said a slur towards him. but it was okay for him to do it. Just to give you the lowdown, such an asshole. Dave Portnoy, some of the things that he did, let's listen to this. Portnoy said, I never condone sexual assault. If you're a size 6 and you're wearing skinny jeans, you kind of deserve to be assaulted, right? I'm using lighter words here because we're on YouTube. Dave Portnoy said that. And he said it was a joke. When he was confronted by it from Inside Edition, he said, correct, I stand by that. I think it's a funny joke. She said, do you know how offensive that is? He said, no, I obviously don't. 2020, multiple videos of Portnoy surfaced that showed him using the N-word or joking about blackface. So these are just some of the things that David Portnoy has done. In 2016, he had a segment about Colin Kaepernick, and he said, so I'm going to say something that's racist, explaining he thought Kaepernick was an ISIS guy. Throw a head wrap on this guy. He's a terrorist. Dave Portnoy said that about Colin Kaepernick. He looks like a bin Laden. That's not racist, he said. Why is this important? Because now Dave Portnoy is pissed because someone said a anti-Semitic slur to him, and now he's really upset. So Barry Weiss allowed him to have this interview on CBS this morning because she's the one that's in charge there now, where he gets to vent and whine and cry and say, poor oh me. I kid you not. Check it out. In case you missed it here it is. Again, Dave Portnoy, the guy who said, suck it up, get over it, all this stuff, is now on CBS this morning whining like a baby.
Away. Raised in a liberal Jewish home outside of Boston, Portnoy now represents a movement in conservative politics, a young, mostly male fan base who turned away from Democrats and voted for Donald Trump.
So what happened to the Democrats? Why did they lose so many young men?
People often think I have the answer. My nutshell is generally they were very anti-normal guys. Like if you, there's
what do you mean normal guys?
Yeah, it's okay.
Are you saying there's only one way to be a guy?
If that girl's hot, hey, that girl's hot. I want to drink. I want to party. I like frat parties. I like that. That was all bad. Like, and to be honest, it's the white guy, and this sounds, but was the bad guy. Became the bad guy. And there's a lot of white dudes who are like, well, I'm not the bad guy. Like, what are you getting mad at me for? I wasn't here for colonialism or any of the stuff that you guys are complaining about 200 years ago. Like, what did I do? And even with the Trump stuff, he won the election, and you had a candidate basically calling you a deplorable, or you're a Nazi if you vote for Trump. I don't know if they use that exact word, but it felt like that.
Lately, though, Portnoy has been in the headlines.
Did everybody notice what Dave Portnoy did there? He said people who were normal, men who were normal. And who did he say was normal? Pay attention to that.
Not for crossing a line, but for his efforts to draw one on anti-Semitism.
I've seen in my own experience, just being Barstool, the difference between how much hate I get. I mean, occasionally you get, hey, kike or Jew or whatever. It's every day now. Like, there's a definitive shift in what's going on. So yes, now I for me, being a Jewish person, like you gotta step up. You're kind of someone people look up to in the Jewish community. You have to be like, all right, this is not normal, with the guys. People are coming in with real hate.
How
do you guys believe that he is getting this language every day? Do you guys really believe this? I can't believe that this guy gets an entire segment to come on here and cry and whine. What a joke.
You explain that line to people.
It's a tough one, and sometimes they always don't get it.
And just last week, a man was arrested for using an anti-Semitic slur at Portnoy while he was taping a video in Mississippi.
The success of Barstool and yourself is based on not being afraid to offend. right? Speech is speech, a joke is a joke. Do you see a connection between what you unleashed and what you now have to deal with?
No, because I think Barstool and myself has always had a pretty good moral compass. So we've never stood for hate or anything of that ilk. I mean, do I think that feminists should complain about a Diet Coke can being skinny and that somehow is like leading to a eating disorder by Diet Coke having a skinny can? That I think is crazy. And there are things that I think people get far too worked up, like he, she, verbs, like crazy to me. Making jokes that you are trying to hurt people's feelings and are based in hate, that's never flown with us.
But it has. But it has. That's the thing. So do you see who they give a mic to? Do you see who they give attention to? By the way, the guy standing next to him, this gentleman who's interviewing him, is also very pro-Israel. For those who are not aware, he was the one that pushed back on Ta-Nehisi Coates when Ta-Nehisi Coates appeared on CBS Sunday morning and was talking about his book, The Message. Because Ta-Nehisi Coates said that there's apartheid in Israel. He's the one, Tony, he's the one who pushed back on him. So just think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Imagine if everybody in this country, every time a slur was thrown our way, we got our own guest spot on CBS this morning. This is the work of Barry Weiss. This is the work of Barry Weiss taking over CBS this morning. You see what she's doing with the content. You see what she's trying to focus on. They are pushing this narrative and this propaganda that, oh my God, everything is happening, you know, that anti-Semitism has increased rapidly, etc. And so they need this story from Dave Portnoy because he's very well known. They need this story from him to continue to push that narrative. Now, this is not to say those things don't happen, but it's just interesting that he's the one that's whining of all people after all the things that he said. And what they want to do is they want to convince you that the words are more hurtful and matter more than kids being killed in Gaza. That the words are more hurtful and harmful than action. I just saw videos of Palestinians in tents where the water is rising in the tents and they have to continue to keep moving and move out of the tents. Now they have no damn tent. The sanitation is still bad. People are still starving in Gaza, but Barry Weiss isn't going to give a segment to a Palestinian American. So this is the propaganda that is being pushed, and this is how they do it. Dave Portnoy of all people.
I'll talk more politics, probably unfortunately becoming my dad.
He's voted for Trump 3 times. Still, Portnoy, who supports abortion rights, says these days he's disgusted by politics.
I mean, who the heck would want to get into politics anyways? Like, people always ask me that. It's like, what, are you crazy? You can get more done as a private citizen. Everyone just hates your guts. And I don't know why half these people, I feel like it gets the worst candidates, period. 99% of politicians are scumbags. But, you know, you look at what happened to Charlie Kirk. Serious stuff. Like, I don't want that in my life.
It's at that level, okay.
Well, you get into politics,
yeah,
like if that's what you're doing.
Look, I just met with Governor Shapiro. Like, he had his house burned down.
Shapiro, somebody tried to kill Trump.
So see what's happening. Notice who Tony mentioned. Tony said, I just met with Governor Shapiro. His house was burned down. Okay. Weren't there 2 politicians that were killed in Minnesota earlier in the year? But Tony mentioned someone whose house was set on fire, which is still wrong. But this is what they're doing. They're trying to elevate that and say, look, this is the most oppressed group in the United States, which is a fucking lie. And I'm not going to sit up here and let my audience to believe that at all. But nobody ain't feeling sorry for you, Dave. Nobody feeling sorry for you, Dave, because you didn't feel sorry for anybody else. Did not feel sorry for you, dude. I can't believe you get a segment for this.
Charlie Kirk assassinated, Pelosi's husband. I mean, I like my life.
Portnoy is legally separated and has no plans for kids. He does give back, boosting small businesses all over the country with his pizza reviews.
This is good pizza.
And with the tens of millions of dollars he raised for them during the pandemic.
And now they want to make him to be out this great guy. They want to make him out to be this great guy. So Dave Portnoy, again, is a douche. He's a douche. And Dave Portnoy, when he was saying these things about people, he didn't want to turn down for what? He did not want to do it. But now that it's being done to him, oh my God, they're after me. I'm the victim. Barry, CBS, let me come on and complain. Help me, save me, protect me. This is the propaganda hard at work here, and it's absolutely disgusting. So it's the same thing I said about Ben Shapiro. Mr. Facts don't care about your feelings. Apparently, he don't care about facts. And he was saying this about other people. This guy, Dave Portnoy, who started Barstool Sports in his parents' basement, he has been able to make a lot of money off of this. I don't feel any pity here for Dave. Dave is going to be fine. What was really troubling about that conversation is that notice who he said is a normal person. Normal people. Ay. It's all fun and games until it's done to you. That's how I look at it. But everybody pay attention to what is happening with CBS because this is the work of Barry Weiss. So I want you guys to see what's going on there. Changes have been happening and changes have been coming. Yes, they have. Okay. Thank you for the super chat, D Belfry. Like PE said, can't trust it. Public Enemy, no, you can't. And shout out to Sonia Zayas for becoming a Sabby member. Let's give Sonia a big whoop whoop in the house. Shout out to What Democracy, who's been a member for 9 months. Governor Shapiro covered up a murder as DA of Philly. Look up Ellen Greenberg. Maybe they burned his house because he's a bad guy. Interesting. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have one more story before we get to the documentary. Okay, this one's a weird one. It's a weird one, but we got to talk about it. Did everybody hear this story last month about the Doordash driver? She said she was delivering food and she said that she was sexually assaulted because the gentleman, I guess, was passed out, drunk, naked, had his pants off, and his junk was hanging out. It's the best way I can describe it here on YouTube. And she made a video of that exchange, and then she posted that video on social media. Well, now she's in trouble. Now she is in trouble, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, we are not going to show that guy laying on the couch, but I do want to show you that video and what she is saying now. This is interesting. A DoorDash delivery driver is going viral after she was fired from the company after claiming she was sexually assaulted while delivering food to a customer who was passed out with his pants down and the door wide open. Now, people have different opinions about this. Some people are wondering if she showed everything that happened. Some people are wondering if she actually opened the door herself. Some people are wondering if she walked inside of there. I don't know, but there are speculations that are happening online about this particular story. We are obviously can't start from the beginning because I'm not going to show this dude's junk on the show, but we're going to start from this part where she is walking away and she's filming. Listen to this.
Hey guys, so DoorDash just deactivated me 2 days after I reported my sexual assault. Hey guys, I just lost my job and they won't tell me why. They're supposed to send an email immediately after deactivation providing you the reason why and a link to appeal, and they didn't. So I contacted support and they made me sit on the phone with them for 50 minutes just to tell me that they can't tell me the reason why and I have to just go ahead and appeal without knowing why. So my chances of getting my account back, they have my money in that account. I was working. I was literally working and they deactivated me. This is related. They just punished me for posting about my sexual assault while DoorDashing.
Woo, honey. Did anybody notice how she's smiling at the beginning? That part's kind of weird, huh? Look at this again.
Sexual assault. Hey guys, I just lost my job and they won't tell me why. They're supposed to send an email immediately after deactivation providing you the reason why and a link to appeal. And they didn't. So I contacted support and they made me sit on the phone with them for 50 minutes just to tell me that they can't tell me the reason why and I have to just go ahead and appeal without knowing why. So my chances of getting my account back, they have my money in that account. I was working. I was literally working and they deactivated me. This is related. They just punished me for posting about my sexual assault while.
So here's the thing, and I'm going to show you the response that has come from DoorDash because they have issued a response. You can't, well, you can, but when you take a video of someone, obviously without their knowledge, and they are unclothed, trying to say this the nicest way possible, and then you post that on social media, or let's say you send it to a number of people, right? Some people used to call it sexting and all that kind of stuff. The person that you videotaped, they can actually file suit against you because you did that without their knowledge. From what I saw from the video at the very beginning, it looks like the guy was drunk and passed out. I don't know why his junk was out. Can't help you there. And I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to imagine what could have been happening. But they can go after you if you post the video footage. So what do you guys think happened? Do you think DoorDash fired her because she reported that incident? And by the way, he did not physically touch her or say anything to her. Again, he was passed out on the couch, but his junk was out. Do you think that's the reason? Or do you think it's a different reason? I'm going to tell you in just a second. Let's continue.
DoorDashing. They just fired me. And the police are doing nothing. I lost my job. And that was my only way to make money to pay my bills. 3 days ago, October 12th, 2025, I was a victim of SA by a DoorDash customer while I was doing my job as a DoorDash driver. Excuse me if you've already seen this. This is my third time posting this because TikTok keeps silencing me and taking my videos down and giving me strikes.
TikTok is taking it down because you can't post these videos of naked people on TikTok.
So if I get one more strike, you guys, I'm just letting you know right now my account is going to be banned. So I'm going to try to word this as chill as possible to avoid getting this video striked. So on October 12th, 2025, the DoorDash customer requested that their order be left at their front door. When I arrived at their front door was wide open. Their lights were on. And they were sleeping on the couch within eyesight of the front door with their pants and underwear pulled down to their ankles, and they were indecently exposed to me. I got this on video, and I'm not even going to be posting the video clip anymore because I'm pretty sure that's what's getting me the strikes. But yeah, I reported it to DoorDash, and DoorDash did ban the customer. And then 2 days later, DoorDash banned me, which doesn't seem unrelated. I appealed, and they were supposed to respond to my appeal within 7 to 10 business days. They didn't even provide me a reason for my deactivation. They're supposed to send an email. They didn't. So I contacted support, and they told me to continue with my appeal without knowing a reason why. There's an option to select, don't know why I was deactivated, and then you still have to explain yourself. So I did. And within 12 hours afterward, they had already denied my appeal.
So I will say DoorDash probably should have told her the reason why she was fired. I will say that. But I'm going to show you their statement.
Really never getting my DoorDash account back. DoorDash deactivated me. DoorDash punished me for exposing my assaulter. And TikTok is currently punishing me for exposing my story time. And this is the only justice I'm getting because I also reported this to the police and the police are doing nothing. So, hey guys, it's been a minute, a whole 24 hours, I know. But I have an update as of October 16th, 2025. But first and foremost, I just want to thank everybody for the overwhelming support and allyship that you've shown me. It's really making me feel so validated and seen and heard. And that's really helping me through this tough time. So I just want to let you guys know I really appreciate the outpouring of support. So the update is, last night I was made aware, a bunch of people started commenting on my pages that DoorDash made a public statement about me on their TikTok story and on their most recent Instagram post in the comment section. And I'm not going to speak too much further on details, but what I am going to say is I and the entire rest of the world found out why I lost my job at the exact same time. I didn't find out before you guys. I'm just letting you know this right now. The people that saw their public statements and made me aware that they made those public statements knew why I lost my job before I did. Because I went and I checked my email once I was made aware that they made those public statements, and they sent me the deactivation email around the same time they released the public statements, like literally within the same hour. So they sent me my deactivation email explaining my reason for being deactivated a whole 24 hours after they deactivated me, and a whole 24 hours after I already submitted my appeal, and about 12 hours after they had already denied my appeal. They finally sent me the email explaining why they fired me. So I and the rest of the world, we all found out why I lost my job together.
Okay. Now let me tell you the other side of the story. Because according to the gentleman at that house, the guy at the house, apparently that guy has a Ring camera. And the other side of the story is that she opened that door. The other side of the story is that the door was closed and that this is captured on the Ring camera and that she opened the door. See, there's always two sides to a story, so it's probably sometime somewhere in between. Who knows? But I'm going to show you what DoorDash said. So again, like I said, this is making a lot of news here. DoorDash driver allegedly posted TikTok video of naked sleeping customer. Now she's under arrest. So let me show you what is happening now, because it's not just about her losing her job. It says here that she was arrested on November 10th in connection with the October 12th incident at Oswego, New York residence. It says here the investigation began October 13th. It goes on to say here, Henderson reported she was sexually assaulted during the incident. Police said in their statement, however, the Oswego police said they found no evidence of sexual assault against Henderson. The man who appeared incapacitated and unconscious in the video had been cooperating with investigators. Henderson allegedly uploaded a video of the nude male on social media, and police say her video was taken from the exterior of the residence. Henderson said on her own TikTok page that she was subject to indecent exposure. Goes on to say here, the customer who was naked and was asleep within plain view of the front door where she was asked to deliver the order. Go on here. She has since posted several videos accusing TikTok, DoorDash, and the Oswego police of silencing or punishing her for reported the alleged assault. They just punished me for reporting it. Of course, you guys saw that part there. We contacted for a statement on Henderson's accusations. DoorDash directed people to an October 16th statement where they confirmed that Dasher involved in posting nude photos of a customer had been deactivated. The statement did not name the Dasher or share details such as the date or location of the incident, but referred to tough and sensitive posts over the past few days. In the statement, DoorDash emphasized their policy of zero tolerance for sexual assault and applauded the Dasher for reporting her alleged sexual assault. However, posting a video of a customer in their home and disclosing their personal details publicly is a clear violation of our policies. The statement continued, adding that Henderson's action of uploading the original video was their sole reason for deactivating her account, and that Henderson has full access to her earnings on the platform. So the statement from DoorDash was that she still had access to her money on the DoorDash platform. So I don't know. Let's go a little bit forward here. Henderson has been charged with 1 count of first-degree dissemination of an unlawful surveillance image and 1 count of second-degree unlawful surveillance. So this is a wild story because she reported an incident against her, and now she's the one that's being charged. Online court records did not indicate plea information for Henderson. The public defender's office that is representing her did not immediately respond to people's requests for information. Henderson was released with a ticket for a future appearance. Oswego police tell people online court records show she is scheduled to appear in court on December 4th. So here's the thing, because I don't know what to believe, but I'm going to say this. Just remember, guys, there's 2 sides to a story. Just something to keep in mind. But again, according to the guy that was passed out, apparently he had a Ring camera, and that the Ring camera apparently shows that she opened the door. So I don't know. But you can't turn down for what? For this one. Kind of wild, guys. Kind of wild. I don't know. I don't know what else to say. But 2 sides to the story. Okay, it is now 8:21. I promised you guys that I would not keep you waiting, so I do want to go ahead and get started and start the documentary. First and foremost, I do want to let you know at the end of the documentary, my editor, Scott Hanshaw, will be joining us, so you guys finally get to meet him because he did tremendous work with this. He really took it to another level. We already had the in-person premiere of the documentary at Roxbury Community College. Guys, they gave us a standing ovation. They really did. I was not expecting that. So I'm curious to see how you feel about it and what you think. There is a poll question. If you haven't answered that question, please answer it. Is there gentrification happening in your city or your town? So as we go into this documentary, I do want to say this. Here's something that people need to understand. I think people have a perception of Boston that is only one-sided. And what was important for me about doing this documentary is to show you the other side of Boston that you often don't hear about and most people don't know about unless they live here. And even then, people that I've met who have contacted me recently and after the premiere at Roxbury Community College, they told me, some of them told me they had no idea this was going on. And so if you've never been here or if you have been here and you ask the question, are there Black people in Boston? Where are they? What happened to them? Well, there are Black people here, but there's a story about this, something that happened in the past and something that's still happening today. There are 4 pieces to this story, 4 pieces to a puzzle. And each one of these pieces is what led to the Black erasure in Boston. That's what I want you to note. I hope you enjoy the film. We're going to go ahead and bring it in here. Also, for those of you who want to see just the documentary itself, that will post on Thursday. That's the 4K version of the film. So it won't have like comments, of course, at the bottom of the screen or anything like that, as we'll probably put some comments up tonight. But if you just want the documentary and that's it, that will be released on Thursday. And from here, we'll be applying to enter film festivals. So I'm really excited. Let me know what you guys think. This is where I bring it in, and this is where I step back. All right, Eric, we ready?
Boston, Massachusetts, home of winning sports teams, elite universities, and sometimes a lot of snow. But some might say that there are 2 Bostons. I came to Boston to attend Northeastern University for grad school, but there was something about Boston that was noticeable to me. It almost felt as though Boston had effectively hidden its Black population. So I had to ask myself, what happened to all the Black people?
One new source of industrial manpower is the Negro, recruited from the South by the thousands, giving up 50 or 75 cents a day jobs for the lure of higher paid war work in the North. The migration, which will have a profound effect on the course of American life, is accompanied by conflict. Race riots in northern communities like Philadelphia, Chicago, and East St. Louis, Illinois, where 37 Americans are killed, white and Negro.
Oftentimes, when the Great Migration in the United States is discussed, Boston is omitted from that part of the conversation. The Great Migration, where Black Americans moved from the South to northern cities to get better paying jobs. Oftentimes, these jobs were at factories or other plants. But Boston was also a part of the Great Migration. After World War II, thousands of Black people moved from the South to Boston. And even times, if you were to look up or research history, it's almost very difficult here in Boston to find this information. It's almost as if we were never here. My name is Sabrina Salvati. I host a political podcast called Sabs, where I discuss issues that are often overlooked by mainstream media. One of those issues that I'm very passionate about happens to be gentrification. Gentrification is when wealthy, affluent people begin to populate a neighborhood that is poor or working class. And oftentimes, Black communities are hit the hardest by gentrification. Now, gentrification is something that Boston City Councilor candidate Reggie Stewart knows all too well.
Over here, they're building a residential building. I think 34, 36 units, something like that. The only problem is if you look at the income levels in this neighborhood, particularly in regards to Black people, we're at about 30 to 40% AMI at best for most of us. So what that means is that whatever is built here, the vast majority of people that live here or would seek to stay here or even return here after being pushed out, they're not going to be able to afford it, point blank. And when I see the bike racks here, the fact that those are here and that this hasn't gone through the entire process signals to me that the developers feel like this is a done deal. Black people specifically are being pushed out. There was a study that I came across that found of the top 10 cities that had more than 10 instances of gentrification within the urban centers. Boston came up in the 70s, I believe it was third, then again in the 80s, and again in 2010. So you're seeing over decades that the intensity of gentrification, Boston is towards the top of that list. What that means is that Black people are literally removed. If you look at the census data from 2010 to 2020, Black people decreased in population size and share. The white population has increased, the Hispanic population has increased, the Asian population has increased. Black people are the ones that are being removed. They're ending up in places like Brockton and other areas outside of Boston because developers come here, raise the rents or raise the prices, which triggers the few homeowners in the area with higher property taxes, many of them elderly and on fixed incomes. So they have to sell because they can't afford that sharp increase in taxes. And so the developers build here and snatch up properties as people get sold, flip them into condos that we can't afford, raise the rents to the point that we can't afford. If you look at City Hall and the State House, no one's talking about that specific racial and historical component that Black people are the only ones who are leaving.
Believe it or not, redlining made gentrification possible. Redlining allowed financial institutions to refuse or limit financial services to certain neighborhoods based on their race. Now, this practice was absolutely discriminatory. Picture this. Imagine a map of Boston. Now imagine that some of those neighborhoods are shaded with the colors red, green, blue, and yellow. Well, this was an alert to financial institutions. It alerted them that the red neighborhoods should not receive financial services regardless of the household income. Again, this was 100% discriminatory, but it happened. And this ultimately led to gentrification. If you're a developer, or if you're someone that has higher income, looking at those red neighborhoods, you are able to know that the property values in those neighborhoods were significantly low. So as a developer, you can buy up as many homes in that neighborhood as you want, renovate them, and sell them. You see this happening today with all of the high-rise condos that are appearing in multiple urban communities across the country. One of Boston's more infamously redlined neighborhoods is Roxbury. Roxbury resident Antonia is a reparations activist in Boston. She's not only fighting back against gentrification, but Antonia's focus is specifically for American freedmen. American freedmen are those that were released from slavery in the United States. Antonia is a descendant of American freedmen.
So right now we're centered in Roxbury, Mass. And if you look around, this is now named Nubian. There was a group of people who got together and thought that it would be better to name it something Afrocentric other than being Dudley Station, the old name, which was a slave master. This was a thriving, bustling community, and there was a lot of Black, African-American, American freedman spirit in this community. There was a lot of businesses. And if you look around now, there's nothing that represents us here. This corner was Nubian Ocean, and it was a variety store that had everything. And then further down was the trinket store that had Afrocentric statues, jewelry. It had Black cards. It had anything that tied us back to the motherland. However, if you look around now, the businesses here don't represent our culture. Look at the storefronts as we go down. There's really nothing here that's American freedmen related. We really don't have any businesses that reflect us in our own community. These were buildings here. They tore them down. I don't know what they're building there. They never said anything. This is Foot Locker today. It used to be Walgreens. So we have no pharmacy in the immediate area. And another thing in our community, we don't have our own supermarket. Around the 1960s and 70s, we had Blair's Supermarket here. Nubian Square right now is the most deserted area. All the communities are thriving, like Fields Corners, Uppers Corner. You have Codman Square, you have Mattapan bustling. We have really nothing, but the rents are higher here. And most of the affordable houses here, the minimum income is $100,000. And our people don't make that kind of money here in the city of Boston. Everything that's being built around here is being gentrified. This right here is all new. This was Whittier Street Projects. It was all bricks. They tore that down to make affordable housing. One of the biggest things down here is, we call them the methadone mild mass and cast people. This area is really saturated with drug addiction. The police and the fire, ambulance down there because there's always overdoses in this area. So you just don't want to be in an area where this is what you call home for 50 years, and this is what you got to deal with. This is Frugal Bookstore. This is the biggest staple in our community that's Black owned. It's our bookstore. They've been in the community for quite some time. Beautiful bookstore. Every genre of literature that you want is in here. And that is the only Black American freedman business in this community. This park was called Washington Park, and they named it Malcolm X Park. This park was really a staple in our community, along with other city parks. My mom basically raised us to come to this park. You don't see as much activity here as you did when I was growing up. So I'm talking about the 60s and 70s, where it was packed on the weekends with baseball teams, like multiple teams would play right back to each other. So we don't really have a whole lot that goes on here now, and I never knew why. I don't understand why. This is Washington Street, and so this is where some of the businesses were at. The two oldest landmarks on this street are Drains. That was one of the original hair salons. And next to it is the Silver Slipper where Malcolm X went. Look at the Silver Slipper. So that represents our heritage. That represents an iconic landmark where Malcolm X came from. We can't find the records or pictures to show a thriving Black American communities. Like, I'm looking for the pictures from 1940s, 1950s. They've been erased. So when you look up this area, you'll see the Caucasians, the Jews used to live here, but you won't find anything thriving for Black Boston or Black Americans. And so we've been erased.
And speaking of Malcolm X, the city of Boston had decided to make his family home a historical site, which is why I was quite surprised to see that his family home was in such poor condition. Why was it like this?
When you own an historical landmark, you might be eligible for some funds to help with the upkeep or maintenance of a property, but it's primarily your responsibility. It's very difficult if an historic property is owned by a private individual. They see that as the family's responsibility versus a nonprofit. It's much easier for a nonprofit to raise money and say, like, we need to fix the roof on this house. Donors aren't as willing to come and fix your roof.
Now, with every problem, there's supposed to be a solution. The solution to redlining was a program called urban renewal. The reason why urban renewal was considered a solution to redlining is because urban renewal involved clearing out these so-called slum areas and building new housing, new businesses, new developments. Now, with those new businesses and housing, that would mean that the property values in the redline areas would now be greater. This would mean that banks would be willing to lend money to those families in that area. But unfortunately, urban renewal did the exact opposite. Urban renewal led to more displacement.
The Madison Park section of Roxbury, what happened there was sort of an outgrowth of the urban renewal plans. It was a neighborhood where in the last 80, 90 years, people of great prominence came from that neighborhood, including the Haynes family, with former state representative Michael Haynes, drummer Roy Haynes, who used to play with John Coltrane's band, with Sarah Vaughan and with Charlie Parker, as well as their brother Vinnie Haynes, who was an activist in that neighborhood. It was a vibrant neighborhood. Going back to the early 60s, the city looked at it as a potential site for a citywide campus. The idea was that the Boston Latin School and Girls Latin would remain separate, but all the other high schools in the city would be housed in one building. This would have been staggering. It would have been a huge building or building complex that the Boston Redevelopment Authority was planning on building. The Boston Redevelopment Authority has the power of eminent domain by which, once an area is declared a slum, it can take housing, pay the owners of the land what the BRA considered to be a fair market value, and then demolish their homes. At that time, you could declare a neighborhood a slum, and then if it had that slum designation, HUD would give a city or a city authority the funding to clear the slum. So the BRA was created as a quasi-governmental agency, and when it was formed, the thinking was that it would be too difficult to do the types of things that the Boston Redevelopment Authority needed to do to redevelop Boston. The city councilors whose constituents were in these neighborhoods would push back. The people would hold the city council, the mayor, responsible for the destruction of their neighborhoods. At the same time that these plans were being hatched, Governor Sargent and the state had a plan to extend Interstate 95 all the way into the city. Where Melniacas Boulevard was going to be a inner belt highway. So it would have stretched along the route of Melniacas Boulevard from Interstate 93 through the Fenway, through Central Square in Cambridge, and through Somerville, then reconnected with Interstate 93. That inner belt, combined with Interstate 95, would have created a pretty large barrier between Roxbury and the rest of the city. Some of the housing units there were run down. Some of them probably needed to be torn down. What ended up happening is that they did tear down a lot of housing. All along Melnia-Cass Boulevard, there were about 2,000 housing units that were demolished in that area, so a lot of people were displaced. Additionally, they took down a lot of housing and commercial buildings along the Columbus Avenue corridor, so going all the way from Ruggles Street down to Jackson Square. The Boston Redevelopment Authority demolished a lot of buildings and took land. It would have been a massive highway interchange there at the corner of what's now Columbus and Melnia-Cass, and the high school campus would have been right next to that. All of the buildings in that Madison Park neighborhood were torn down. So that was the general plan for urban renewal, the way the Boston Redevelopment Authority, its director, Ed Logue, the way they saw it. It was pretty much reflective of the ethos across the country, that inner cities were full of slums. People looked down on those neighborhoods, and so they thought it made sense to tear those neighborhoods down.
The neighborhood of Roxbury, Massachusetts is not the only neighborhood in Boston where Black residents were displaced and are still being displaced today. In Dorchester, Black residents face the same fate. I met with the Franklin Park Defenders, a group of activists fighting back against gentrification, to discuss issues of racial discrimination in Boston.
I was born and raised in Jamaica Plain, and people that look like me no longer live there. It's by design that they've created spaces where we are no longer seen anymore. They're wiping us out one community at a time. And as it spreads across the city, we're becoming extinct here. I hate to say it that way. So my family house on Montebello Road, we did capital improvements in 2019. And during the construction, a white family walked up to me and said, "Are you selling?" "No, I'm not selling." "Are you breaking them up into condos?" "No, I'm not breaking up into condos." She went on to say, this is a white woman speaking to me, "Our people live here now, and we want to live around our people, so you should sell."
Boston has always been, and is now, the most racist city, pound for pound, dollar for dollar, acre for acre, black family for black family. Right now, the whole city is becoming the reverse Middle Passage, the out-migration of black people like no other city.
This whole gentrification concept is not particular to Boston. It's what they did all over the country to black people, because we became land bankers. That we came in, stabilized the land, kept the housing affordable, and kept it usable and things of that nature. But as the land began to be productive, white people who moved out to the suburbs, white people, new migrants into the country, immigrants to the country, they saw this land as one affordable for them, and they wanted that land.
This is where we're at in a 400-year trajectory since the first Elizabethan Anglo-Saxons got here to found Boston and Harvard and New England, and were so influential in the founding of the Republic.
This gentrification began a long time ago. There's been this push since the late 1800s to move black people out of areas that were productive and useful and allow white people to take it over. Black community, which started in downtown Boston, which you'd call downtown Scollay Square. The black folks who lived in North End and Beacon Hill, they were there because they were waterfront and they were doing the stevedore work. The nouveau riche did not want to live down there. And so as it improved and as the harbor area and everything around Beacon Hill started to grow up and be built up by a lot of black workers and dock workers who made the quality of life better, they were being pushed in the southwesterly direction. We moved from what now is the South End, and they started building that up in the late 1940s and 50s. But because they had to take care of the people who lived here in Boston, particularly the residents who were coming back from the war and folks who were coming as part of the Irish migration, things of that nature, they built public housing. They built housing that was affordable for people, the working class people at that time. And it served the purpose. But after it served the purpose, they had to take into consideration they had neglected all the other housing. The South End was changing. And so they kept pushing black and brown people further in the southwesterly direction. And so we came into what was Roxbury, and they started building up and making it worthwhile. It was a thriving community because it was considered the suburbs of Boston. In the 1960s, a guy named Tony Downs wrote a book called Opening Up the Suburbs. And his plan was to move low and working class people, particularly black people, out of the inner city and move them out into small communities in the suburbs, and then retake the inner city so that you have a mass of wealthy people living in the city. One of the problems with moving black people into the suburbs is that the U.S. federal government, based on racist concepts of black people, they would not give housing, they would not give loans, they would not give mortgages to black people. So while they built developments and complexes for white people to move in the suburbs, they only wanted black people to move in areas that were controlled, and they were not making funds available. So this whole plan of gentrification isn't a new concept. In every city you go into in the Northeast, and of course, you know, in the West, and San Francisco is probably one of the better examples, they kept moving black people out of the inner city into suburban areas where there's less transportation, less opportunity for jobs, and clearly a totally different concept of living in existence. So it's a plan. It's been in place for a long time.
I was born in a house on Monroe Street. 21 was the number, was a 6-family brownstone, which was snatched by City of Boston during urban renewal. I was 2 when we had to move in 1963 from that house. That displaced us to a place, what is now the Dudley Triangle. That house was replaced by, oddly enough, a playing field for years. And then we were given the option to take an apartment at Marksdale Gardens. So think of the dynamics of gentrification. The idea that we would take generational wealth from people, put people in an apartment, and then say, look at what we've built, all brand new, shiny, for your occupation, for rent. That was in the day termed Negro removal. People will tell you all day long that, you know, we don't do that anymore. While the gentrification displacement equation isn't as bad as 1963, it hasn't gotten much better now.
I was a Boston public school teacher and teaching at BC and at Harvard and at Roxbury Community College in the 90s. I have over 2,000 former Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan students, most of whom no longer live in Boston. I once had a student, there was a sidewalk auction of his home right outside the front door of the school, visible from our classroom. We had to pull the curtains down so this young 7th grade boy wouldn't have to see his family 3-generation house across the street on Kearsarge Avenue near Dudley Square auctioned.
I moved into Roxbury 24 years ago and probably was a gentrifier. It was much to my horror that I realized what I was living in the middle of. The former occupancy of the building had been Section 8 housing. Almost immediately, the people I met, the neighbors I met and came to like and respect, were telling me about the history of our corner of Roxbury, which had started to become pickings for the wealthy. The South End had been outpriced for white middle-class people wanting to move back into the city, and they were actually advertising homes in Roxbury as the new South End. And this is in a neighborhood which is called Highland Park, where some of our more luminary leaders had been fighting for a black model of community. That never happened. When the mayor decided she wanted to put in Roxbury more dense micro units, the mayor and her people in the city put their thumb on the scale. They appointed 3 new commissioners to our Architectural Conservation District Commission and outvoted the neighborhood. So we now have, going up in a family neighborhood, which is zoned for triple deckers, a 7-story building with 39 micro units.
None of these buildings have been fully rented. Most of the rents are $5,400. But these are the buildings that you're saying are to help the housing issue. No, it's not at $5,400. When you have the affordable units staying vacant because they can't pass approval, you can't really be sitting here fighting for housing if you're not inspecting what you expected them to do. So they're getting away with it. This is gentrification.
There have been lots of games over the years that the city has tried to play in order to try to hold on to the city's population that have not worked well.
Now, to Rod's point, Boston does try to find ways to hold on to the population that is currently here. But some of the games that have been played with the Black population, in particular in Boston, lies in the area of virtue signaling. For example, former Mayor Marty Walsh, he started an event called the Donna Summer Roller Skate Night. Donna Summer, probably one of my favorite singers of all time, is a legend and should be honored in Boston. I think a Donna Summer Roller Skate Night was great. In fact, I actually went to the very first Donna Summer Roller Skate Night. But we call this virtue signaling because if you are choosing to honor a Black singer that grew up in Boston, but at the same time, you are displacing Black people from their homes, this is just a game.
The policies are emblematic of moving people around and giving the impression that something's happening. But if you look at housing prices, they're not more affordable. A lot of that policy benefits folks with money, people who are investors. It doesn't really make things more affordable for folks who actually rent in the city of Boston.
There are a lot of people for whom this is not new. The thing is, it's overwhelming in ways I didn't quite anticipate as far as the rate of this gentrification, as it's called, which is the displacement of people, the structural and continuous impact. Make no mistake about it. It's not just bricks and mortar or the equity or the value of that bricks and mortar. It's cultural continuity. Okay, it's intergenerational, not just financial wealth, intergenerational self-knowledge wealth, which is worth more than financial wealth. And it's also the natural ecological wealth, the intergenerational cultural wealth of not only the most recent stewards for the last 75, 80 years, but really for the last 600. Former colonial governors, former Massachusetts tribe people, Algonquin speakers. There's evidence of all these people in your motherfucking backyards in Roxbury.
Now, the issue that brought the Franklin Park defenders together is the recent takeover of White Stadium, located inside of Franklin Park. Franklin Park is the largest and the last component of the Emerald Necklace. Located within Roxbury, it is bordered by Mattapan, Roslindale, and Jamaica Plain neighborhoods in Boston.
When I first approached by the mayor's office to look at this proposal that was coming in, the league had not been established. They were not an incorporated body, but they had already put together a plan and idea to have a soccer league in White Stadium in Franklin Park. The reason I was approached because I'm the president of the Garrison Trotter Neighborhood Association, a community-based neighborhood association which has been around for 48 years. We've worked with the city in every aspect of what goes on in the neighborhood, but we were the group that basically helped form the core of individuals that set up the Franklin Park Coalition at the same time, in 1978. We took an interest in the park because it was our closest neighbor. It provided the most resources and access for us, but also a lot of the activities and programs that the community used. The schools in our community took advantage of White Stadium and the park. We supported people who had programs in the park on a regular basis, everything from mass, well-organized activities like the cross-country and the Cancer League and community birthday parties and roller skating. And so the neighborhood groups and organizations that had activities went to Franklin Park. So we took an interest in Franklin Park, and the interest was how to get it respect, how to get it support, how to fix it up, because it was totally neglected. For Olmsted Creation, one of the greatest landscape architects in this country, to be treated that way, it said to us something else is wrong. There's something wrong to have this 500-acre park be abandoned, to have the golf course only have 9 of 18 holes working, to have the zoo with the animals not getting the support and things that they needed to make it a world-class zoo. that things were being taken out of the park rather than being put in the park. And when you stop to think, 10% of what they spent on the Boston Common was going into the maintenance and care of Franklin Park. And that's why the Franklin Park Coalition came along to save that park. From 78 to 98, we worked hard to make sure the park grew and that it was taken care of, repaired, and fixed up. That stadium was a part of the park. In the activities that we went to, the stadium represent safety, represent organized space, it represented a place that people could bring their programs and kids. It was an active park.
Growing up there, flying kites as a child, we lived in that park and in that stadium for as long as I can remember. To be able to find that one quiet place when life beats you down Monday through Friday, it has been Franklin Park for us. That one place where we could find peace, tranquility. It has been a place where friends that we haven't seen for years, we connect there. Some of them live on a different side, on the other side of Franklin Park, and we live on the other side, and we meet in the middle in Franklin Park in White Stadium. Franklin Park has been a place for me where we have built community. It's been a place where we come together, our cultures come together, and we utilize the one of the few green spaces left for Black and brown people. And all these things are at risk.
So the idea that they were going to turn this over to a private concern, in the beginning, the neighborhood association I represent, Garrison Trotter, said, that sounds like a good idea. Let's explore it. We thought that they would fix it up, utilize it partially for the activities of a soccer league, and that the rest of the time would be for the use of students. When we got the actual proposal, we were able to see that they had no intention of making it a public space. They had no intentions of making it usable and accessible to the public and to the communities that were there. They wanted to take it over and control it. We had seen this example before in the South End on Columbus Avenue when Northeastern University took over that park.
Ah, yes, Northeastern University. This is an institution that I'm very familiar with because this is where I attended grad school. It's what brought me to Boston.
When I came to grad school here at Northeastern University, I didn't know that this was Roxbury. When I applied to come to grad school here, this neighborhood was described as the Fens. And I remember just saying to myself, oh, okay, well, that's an interesting neighborhood. I wasn't familiar with that neighborhood in Boston, had never heard of that term. I found out later on that Northeastern University had Roxbury change the zip code so that Northeastern wouldn't be in Roxbury. The university came here to invade Roxbury, but didn't think Roxbury was good enough for Northeastern to have that same zip code.
Northeastern University is probably one of the more prominent examples of gentrification in the neighborhood of Roxbury. What was once a commuter college increased in the rankings by becoming a more competitive school. And in doing so, that meant that Northeastern University had to expand. You can see that expansion. You can see the change in the neighborhood on Huntington Avenue when you look across the street and you see a poke station and a shawarma shop. And right down the street from Northeastern University is Orchard Park Housing Projects. This is where the popular R&B group New Edition called home. I spoke to a longtime resident of Orchard Park who had quite a bit to say about the city's efforts to remove Black people.
There was a lot of positive things going on. We had a neighborhood center here. It was the after-school program where a lot of kids came together and we shared our knowledge. You can learn music, you can learn martial arts, you can learn dance. There's a whole lot of cultural things you can learn there, which is now no longer the neighborhood center. We had basketball hoops here where kids were able to play basketball. They tore all the hoops down. We had nice playgrounds and jungle gyms where now if you go around here, you might find maybe one or two. This whole thing originally was by design. It was by design to get the black man out of the household. But if you want to qualify for the subsidy to stay here, you could not have a man living with you at that point in time. You had to be either a single mother or someone with public assistance. And if you receive public assistance, the father could not have been there. But I could say in my personal family, I knew my father, but he didn't live with me. When they want you to move, they offer you something or they bait you with something. They say, okay, you're subsidized here, but if you move, we'll give you a Section 8 voucher. And then they even help you find one like Fall River or New Bedford or maybe Lynn, or they'll help you find somewhere to live. But you're not going to be here.
Do you see gentrification in the projects?
That's everywhere. So I've been to places like Atlanta. I've been to Detroit. I've been to some of these places where the downtown was small. Then next thing you know, the downtown expanded 30 miles. So originally, black folks used to live in downtown. Then we moved to the South End. If you go to the South End now, you have to be a millionaire to live there.
The South End, one of the more grotesque examples of gentrification in Boston. The South End used to be a working class neighborhood. Now there is a great divide where one half of the South End is for the ultra rich and the other side is what remains of what the South End used to be, the working class people. If you exit Mass Ave T Station and walk down the street, you can see the intersection of where old meets new at Mass Avenue and Columbus Ave. One of the more popular businesses that represents the old South End is Wally's Jazz Cafe, a Black-owned business that is very successful in Boston. Hopefully, Wally's will never have to leave.
In the early 50s, the Boston Redevelopment Authority tore down the New York Streets section of the South End. It was named the New York Streets section of the South End because the streets were named after towns and cities in New York. Albany Street is one of the last vestiges of that. It's the area between Albany Street, Washington Street, where the Massachusetts Turnpike is now, and then East Berkeley Street. Mel King, who grew up in that neighborhood, in his book Chain of Change, it was a very vibrant neighborhood. In the eyes of the Boston Redevelopment Authority, it was a slum. The BRA took a wrecking ball to that neighborhood. They sold land to the Herald for $1, where the Herald built its offices and printing plant at that time. But an entire neighborhood was erased. One of the next neighborhoods that the Boston Redevelopment Authority trained its eyes on was Castle Square, which was right next to the New York Streets area. Mel King was kind of a linchpin in this movement. When they tore that neighborhood down, King helped organize the Black and Chinese American people who lived there. What they sought was to gain control of the land and to build low-income housing there. And that's exactly what happened. It was the first time in the city that there was this model of the BRA would tear down a neighborhood and the community would organize and gain control of the land and determine what goes there. A similar thing happened in Madison Park in the mid-60s. They created a community development corporation, and then they obtained control over that land that was not used for the high school. And they built subsidized housing community there. That community has survived.
So this is Blue Hill Avenue. It goes from Dudley Street all the way up to Mattapan. And when there was white flight back in the 1960s, Black people migrated here to the Roxbury area and also Dorchester area. And this was all Black American freedmen. So this is one of the communities that my family first migrated to. My family migrated from South Carolina due to racial terror. They lived on Payson Street first, and then they moved to Roxbury on Cedar Street. Initially, Blue Hill Avenue had trolley cars on both sides. And the reason why they got rid of the trolley cars and gave us buses is because they built the highway so it'd make it easier for white people to commute to the city. So this was a flourishing, thriving community for American freedmen. And the community became demolished or deteriorated during the civil rights movement when Martin Luther King was assassinated. So all this was burnt down. Everything was burnt down, totally demolished, was never built back up. This is where the riots mostly took place. Most of the churches here are unable to sustain, so they're either losing the church buildings or they're selling them. It's vacant, look at it. You see the windows, look at the border of the windows, look at that. See how the property's not taken care of? The civil rights movement springboarded and created the Immigration Act, which allowed all groups of immigrants to come to America. According to the stats, 1% of Black immigrants were in America, less in the city of Boston. And most of these businesses, if you go from Dudley Street, which is the bottom of the hill, all the way up to Mattapan, were Black immigrants, Hispanic, Haitian, West Indian, Caribbean, and you won't find any Black businesses that are American freedmen. And we're trying to figure out where do we fit into the scheme of things. And so I'm sitting on the reparations task force. My thing is to think of ways of making recommendations to right the wrongs. And so part of making those repairs is how do we get American freedmen just as driving as any other group of people in the city of Boston. One of the biggest things that I advocate for is a protected status for the American freedmen. The harms that need to be recognized the most are those that were incurred prior to 1965 with the civil rights movement. Massachusetts sanctioned slavery with the Bodies of Liberty. We were enslaved in the United States, we were enslaved in Boston. American freedmen carry the bulk of the badges and incidents of slavery, and we can't carry the stain of slavery. My ancestors went through civil rights. They went through segregation. They went through, you know what I'm saying, Jim Crow. They went through enslavement, sharecropping, and black codes, and people don't even know our history. Our ancestors were lynched, castrated, forced ancestral breeding, violations of rights, not being able to bleed, whipped, killed, just for being Black. I'm 3 generations removed from slavery. My mother was an illegal sharecropper as a child. They didn't move here until she was 14. My grandparents on both sides, mother and father, were sharecroppers because their parents were slaves. And so it wasn't that far ago. There's a huge significant difference in lived experiences in America, and especially the city of Boston and Massachusetts, than any other group of people. And we know this because of the wealth report. We're at $8, whereas other groups of people are driving much more than us. So they didn't suffer like my ancestors and my elders suffered. My ancestors and my elders were denied homeowner loans, business loans, while other groups of people were incentivized. I want everybody to succeed, but it bothers me sometimes when I look at other people that come here and only been here for a year, you know, and they're thriving. And then they look at it like we're not thriving because we're lazy. We only became lazy when we stopped picking cotton. That's a white trope. So I can't unsee and unlearn what I actually know from a learned experience. And so I'm trying to figure out ways to right the wrongs. And I need the community to speak up about their lived experiences in the community, because that's the only way the stories are going to be told.
Boston leads the nation. Number one, it is the most unaffordable, the least affordable city in the country for raising a child. Even though it is easily provable, it's the least expensive place, if you got the right connections, to launch a professional sports franchise. Unlocking this nationally unrivaled bargain depends specifically upon doing it at public Franklin Park's George Robert White Memorial School Children's Stadium. And it's been intentionally neglected for decades, on ice, for later redevelopment and community displacement in a distant future, which is now.
I'm happy to talk about a women's soccer team. When I first heard there was a women's soccer team coming to Boston, I was thrilled. I'm a soccer coach. When I moved my kids over from England and my daughter hadn't played soccer in England, she came over here and I thought, fantastic. And then I caught wind of the fact that they had never asked the neighborhood associations what they wanted, that it had never even come up for bid, that no other venture had been invited to bid on anything, least of all in a cherished national park that is widely used and enjoyed by the neighborhood. And then when I saw the first photograph of these women in their affluence and their political connections. I was mortified. I will never stop being a feminist, but I will never defend women who are just as greedy as their menfolk. And that's what this is about. So women's soccer, I'm all over it. A women's private franchise for rich women and people who make money out of it to help a corrupt mayor, I'm not all over that.
The proposal was done illegally, and no one has picked up on that fact. For the amount of resources that are being spent, there should have been an automatic trigger that the state got involved in looking at the environmental impacts of what is being proposed, because the project is now over $100 million. The proposal by the soccer league overwhelms the community in which it's in, because when you have games and you have activities this size, you need laydown space. You need space for your trucks, for assistance, for your vendors, for media. There's no space around that stadium that can be used that's not in violation of Chapter 97 laws, which means they have to take public parkland in order to create the space they need for private use of that stadium. They have now cut off in their design the space around the stadium, which is public parkland, so that their people who are coming for the games, who pay $50, $60 for a ticket, could have private use of space, which is public parkland. And that's in violation of the law, and it's a disrespect that you would take public parkland from a community and then give it to a private group to control it.
And once all that's done, and for years, all of your profits from selling beer, wine, fancy apparel are all sheltered because you're doing so in a designated Trump-era 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, quote unquote, opportunity zone, which this park sits smack in the middle of, that gives unprecedented protection to those profits. The city's giveaway of $100 million to lower the cost of these women's investment and completion on time of opening for game day, which is required, is a really bad shell game and a bad precedent. You know, once they just have the first game in the 2026 season, they will have doubled their money just off of the value of their license. They could walk away, make a profit, and Boston is left with this big, ugly Easter church hat and all the maintenance and everything else that goes along with it.
These people have never shown to this community or to the public in general how they are going to manage the traffic flow and impacts. Because 11,000 people looking for parking spaces, cut it down to 5,000. This part of the city was not designed for that. Logistically, it doesn't work. The stadium is done in two parts. The private part, which goes to the Unity Soccer League, which is now Boston League, Boston Nation, whatever it is, and the Boston Public Schools, which represents 2/3 of the development supposed to take place. The Boston Public Schools Facilities Department has never produced a comprehensive design of the work they were going to do. And for the sketches that they showed and the work that they were looking at, it was in violation of the agreement what Olmsted had, that no structures were to be built in Franklin Park, but their design is to build offices and spaces that they have things to do, and they're taking what was now public accessible space and closing and privatizing it. Boston Public School has no plan in place right now to say that when they build a structure and spend over $200 million, that it's going to be a benefit for the public schools. We've used these children, we use these communities as a backdrop. This park for gentrification represents a Trojan horse.
I think that Boston is different than any other city that I've lived in. And being a military kid, I've kind of, I've lived all over. I lived overseas, I've lived down south, I've lived in the Northeast, so we've moved around a lot. Coming from the South, racism there is more overt. It's very obvious, it's loud, it's in your face, like you don't question whether or not something is happening because it's racist. In the Northeast, and in Boston in particular, it is different because the racism that you often experience here is covert racism. It's more subtle. It's also structural racism. The public transportation system in itself is structural racism. In Boston, we have the MBTA. We call it the T. Other cities call this their subway. These are the trains that mainly go underground and sometimes above ground, etc. The MBTA in Boston has several stops in white neighborhoods. But the moment that you get to the Black neighborhoods, the moment you get to Roxbury and Dorchester and even Mattapan, you start to notice those MBTA stops are far and few. If you live in Dorchester and you don't live on the outskirt of Dorchester, your access to the subway is very limited. So if you don't live next to the Ashmont stop, then that means that you're probably gonna have to take the bus. You can take the Green Line, and there are several stops along the Green Line. The Green Line goes all the way from Newton to Heath Street, through Somerville now, which is another city right outside of Boston, also experiencing some gentrification. So you see it, you feel it. When I say it's structural, it means that the institutions that are in place are designed in such a way that make it more difficult for Black neighborhoods. You know, I was so shocked when I moved to Boston and I realized that they still have busing programs here. I couldn't believe that. They have an education lottery where parents can enter their kid into this raffle of sorts. And if they win, then that means that their child gets to attend a school, hopefully of their choice, in one of the more wealthier white neighborhoods. You had kids in Roxbury and Dorchester getting on a bus to go across a highway to go to school in Newton, which is a very wealthy city right outside of Boston, to go to school with kids that they don't even interact with on the weekend, to go to school with kids that they don't even live in the community with. Then they have to get back on that bus, go back on the highway, and go back to their neighborhood in Roxbury or Dorchester. Now, I say that that is part of structural racism because instead of fixing the schools that are in Roxbury and Dorchester, they tell the parents, enter this lottery, and if you win, your child gets to go to one of the more privileged schools in a community where they know no one.
The racism in Boston was put on blast in the 1970s, and it goes back decades. There was a long-standing battle between the Irish, who gained control of city politics. We had a period of 100 years where there were Irish-American mayors. It only ended in 1993 when Thomas Menino became mayor. They controlled most of the State House and the Senate, and most of the city council seats were occupied by Irish Americans. Irish Americans at that time saw themselves in a zero-sum game. They had to fight the Yankees to gain political power. With political power came city jobs, and they controlled the city jobs when they controlled the mayor's office, when they controlled the city council, the school committee. During that period, it was incredibly difficult for Black people to get jobs in the schools, to get jobs in the police department, the fire department, to get jobs in City Hall or any part of city government. All of that began to change in the 1970s when NAACP and other groups filed lawsuits against the city. The schools was probably the biggest battle or the most public battle that the city fought. For years, Black people had complained that our children were in school buildings that were more aged, that were older and more dilapidated than those in the white community, that the schools were overcrowded. Children were taking classes in basements and boiler rooms. There were fewer teachers. Black students had textbooks that were decades old. The conditions in schools in majority white neighborhoods were significantly better. However, Black students were not allowed to go to those schools. The city was clearly out of compliance with state law against segregation in schools. The Black community had fought that battle in the 1850s and won that battle. The legislature outlawed segregation in schools in Massachusetts. So we were back again with the same issue. And the school committee, which was all white at that time, wouldn't budge on the issue. The NAACP and a bunch of black elected officials and activists took the school committee in the city to court and won. Judge Garrity ran it under consent decree, mandating that schools be desegregated by busing, but also mandating that the schools hire and promote black teachers, principals, janitors, just the whole gamut, because that whole system, there were very few black people working in the school system. That led to profound changes in the school system, but also in the city, because, finally, as these consent decrees came down, black people began getting access to jobs that they never had access to before. During that desegregation, white people in white neighborhoods became quite violent. They threw rocks at school buses that were bringing black children in. The entire city felt like it was a war zone between white kids and black kids.
I want you to allow the black children to go back to Roxbury.
I would say that 90, maybe 95, 98% of the violence was white kids throwing rocks at us. I mean, I certainly went through that. Never threw rocks at white kids. White kids who came to our neighborhood for whatever reason weren't chased out. But if you went to South Boston, if you went to the white parts of Dorchester, you were taking your life in your hands. And a lot of black people who came to visit Boston stepped into that conflict, not knowing what was going on, got called the N-word, got rocks thrown at them, people were beaten up. Those incidents made headlines. You saw racial violence all across the city. I think Boston, maybe at the time, didn't have much of a reputation for anything else. So the racism stood out.
It's interesting that some of the wealthy neighborhoods in Boston were once black neighborhoods. Like, take Beacon Hill, for example. Beacon Hill is a very wealthy neighborhood in Boston. Ben Affleck, Uma Thurman, and John Kerry have all resided in Beacon Hill, just to give you an idea of how wealthy this neighborhood can be. But once upon a time, Beacon Hill was a neighborhood where slaves sought refuge. In fact, unless you grew up in Boston or you're here as a tourist, you may not be aware that the Museum of African American History is located on Joy Street in Beacon Hill. There's a reason for that. Again, this is where slaves sought refuge. Now, the neighborhood of Beacon Hill has very few black residents.
All of our black leaders are not here anymore to fight for us. We don't have any other black leaders that could come up and support us and help us and speak out for us. We don't have that anymore. So who's speaking for us? It's sure not our mayor.
No, it sure isn't Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, who has been confronted about housing and gentrification in Boston multiple times throughout the years. It was about 3 years ago when I first approached Mayor Wu asking her about the housing situation in Boston. But who exactly is Mayor Michelle Wu? Well, she's originally from Chicago, Illinois, and she came to Boston to attend Harvard University. She later graduated from Harvard Law School. She then went on to work for Boston Consulting Group, otherwise known as BCG. Now, some may feel that because Mayor Wu isn't from Boston, that she may not have understood the struggles of Bostonians, especially Black Bostonians. She may not have understood the structural racism that is embedded in the city. Nevertheless, she went on to serve as a Boston City Councilor, and then in 2020, she declared her candidacy for mayor. One of her major promises was to fix the housing situation. But since her time as mayor, she has allowed developers to build luxury apartments and affordable housing that isn't actually affordable. This is why some Bostonians have an issue with Mayor Wu. She professed herself to be this progressive champion that would tackle the housing crisis, and she turned out to be another mayor in bed with developers. Now, one redevelopment project that Mayor Wu's administration supported was the demolition of an apartment complex called Mildred Haley Apartments. These apartments are located in the neighborhood of Jamaica Plain. Formerly known as Bromley Heath, Mildred C. Haley Apartments was one of the apartment communities that I visited a couple of years ago because residents had complaints about black mold and rat holes that were found on the property. Mayor Wu promised that the city would allocate money towards these apartments to renovate them, to fix them up so that the residents can have an improved quality of living. In the end, this renovation ultimately led to displacement. And it's not just the residents of Mildred Haley Apartments that are dealing with displacement under Mayor Wu's reign. At one point, she even wanted to do this with schools. Mayor Wu considered removing the John D. O'Brien School of Mathematics and Science out of a Black community in Roxbury and transferring that school to a neighborhood called West Roxbury. Now, why is this significant? West Roxbury is a predominantly white, Irish, Catholic neighborhood. You had a mayor who describes herself as the first female person of color to be mayor in Boston, who wanted to take a STEM school from a Black community and put that school in a white neighborhood.
She's taken the land away from us, like urban renewal, moving a STEM school from where it was in Roxbury to West Roxbury, demonstrates this idea of this very authoritarian, paternal, and frankly, patently racist approach to governing that she has to own. When people show you what they are, you should believe them.
Now, there have been positives that Mayor Wu has done for the Black community. For example, recently she established a day called New Edition Day. This was to honor the popular R&B group New Edition and to name a street after New Edition called New Edition Way. This is a positive. This is a plus. This is something that is long overdue. New Edition came out in the 1980s, so it's only time that this should happen. But the unfortunate thing about this that I noticed when I was attending this event is that some of the people who gathered there to honor New Edition were people who grew up in Orchard Park, but were pushed out because their buildings were demolished. This is a living example of virtue signaling.
I think that the mayor, having run for one thing, is complicit in quite another. And gentrification, she wants people who graduate from our graduate schools to stay put and be rich and work in certain firms. And what she's not doing is looking after any of the people, like my friends and neighbors, who live here.
For 2.5, 3 years, I've been working with Madison Park Vocational Technical High School, the only vocational technical high school in the city. The only school could help young women and men, Black and brown, Black or white, get a real opportunity to live and sustain themselves in the city of Boston. They had set aside in their capital budget, in their capital bond bill, $550 million to rebuild, to redo, to create a new Madison Park High School. We were supposed to start in July of 2025, rebuilding the school that's most critical to the education and the future of the children in Boston. The mayor shelved that program, took the money, and said she will build this entertainment center for these multi-billionaires, regardless of the cost.
Why is the mayor willing to throw herself on this sword, do or die, for this project? It's not about soccer. It's more about professional soccer than it is about these children who won't be living here in 10 and 20 years because of gentrification and displacement. It's about the additional profits and capital gains that can be made in this entertainment complex, in this quote-unquote legacy place of Olmsted or Boston, the country's most famous sports town, without having to pay what it would cost to build your own stadium anywhere. This is the last place where they could steal a stadium, repurpose a stadium, get all of the benefit of not having to pay private market costs for acquisition, construction, when you got the husband of Jennifer Epstein doing a no-bid general contract for the stadium. You've got women who are, before this proposal, this project, deeply, intimately associated with ownership of the Boston Celtics, the Boston Red Sox. So those are the future donors to this mayor's future political aspirations as a whatever. This mayor seems to be the biggest rising star in the Commonwealth and in the nation of what might be some perceived woke nuisance or threat nationally because of her public stance against ICE and the president and DEI and all of this other stuff that she does defend verbally in these televised platforms, but at home and on the ground, she has the most to gain politically, perhaps financially, with these investors who, like I said, couldn't be more obviously ill-suited, tone-deaf, unwelcome in this place. When you've got a mayor that's willing to give away so much of what is the taxpayers, what is the adjacent communities, what is really the Commonwealth under law, it's a perfect storm. And this project is something that the nation, the world, the Commonwealth, the city, everyone should be looking at more closely than this. I told you, this is Katrina. This is Emmett Till's mama pulling back a curtain. And if people don't look at what's behind that curtain, it's coming to them.
In 2025, Mayor Wu had a challenger. His name is Josh Kraft. He is the son of New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft. But don't get it twisted. Josh Kraft may be opposed to the takeover of White Stadium in Franklin Park, but his father, Robert Kraft, wants a soccer stadium in Everett, Massachusetts, for the New England Revolution, which is the male soccer team that he owns. Now, one has to wonder, is it possible that Josh Kraft could be opposed to the takeover of White Stadium because of his family's interest in building a new stadium for the New England Revolution in Everett? But what's the big deal? Why does it matter if the Kraft family wants to build a new stadium in Everett, Massachusetts, as opposed to supporting the takeover of White Stadium in Franklin Park? Well, you see, no one sat down and thought about the logistics and the impact on the residents in these communities, especially when it comes to Everett. It was just a couple of years ago that the Encore Casino was brought to Everett, Massachusetts, after many residents were against it because they knew that this would increase traffic and it would make things worse for them. This is the same problem that residents in Franklin Park will also have to deal with. And it brings me to another issue, and that is the Olympics. In 2015, Boston, Massachusetts was considered to host the 2024 Olympics. Now, there was a lot of pushback from residents in Boston that said, absolutely not. Do not bring the Olympics here. We don't have the infrastructure to support it. And Marty Walsh chose to listen to the residents as he was mayor at that time. I really believe that this support for the U.S. women's soccer team in Boston, Massachusetts, in Franklin Park, at White Stadium, is just the beginning. I truly believe that Boston and Boston's leadership is planning on trying to host the Olympics at some point in time. And what greater place to do that than at White Stadium in Franklin Park? while redlining, urban renewal, and gentrification are 3 pieces of the puzzle that led to the erasure of Black Boston, there is still one piece that is missing from this puzzle, and that piece is mass incarceration.
My name is Mac Hudson from Roxbury, Dorchester. I work for Prison Legal Service, part of the Racial Equity and Correction Initiative. I also have my own organization called Access Mass, which deals with racial inequity in the Black and brown community. So what happened to me is not uncommon. I and others were the first juveniles that were prosecuted as adults in Massachusetts and sent to maximum security prison. I served 33 years, mostly for a crime I did not commit. This was like something that had been thought of as a means to funnel more young Black folks into our criminal system, as well as to the institutions itself. What we know now today to be called mass incarceration. Massachusetts has specific laws that deal with juveniles. They have a whole separate process. One of them is called the bind over hearing, meaning that if you get charged with something that they think is heinous or something that should be prosecuted as an adult, there's a process by which they put you through in order to determine to see whether or not you could be rehabilitated as a young offender. If not, through that series of tests, then they prosecute you as an adult. However, in the late 1980s, what they started doing was prosecuting young Black 17-year-olds. 17-year-olds are juveniles. At 18, you're considered an adult. What Massachusetts decided to do was say at 17, you were an adult, which would be in disharmony with the remaining parts of the law. So what this allowed them to do was send droves of children all across Massachusetts, especially in Boston, straight to maximum security prison. Eventually, after 33 years, the parole released me after looking at my case and saying that they felt there was something historically wrong with the identification in that case. Massachusetts really broke up the ecosystem of young Blacks coming into the system by allowing this ambiguous interpretation in which everyone had to know was wrong. We're not situated like other states, where other states don't have juvenile settings to prosecute. We have a specific setting for it. So that's how a lot of us went up to maximum security, and ever since then, it's been getting younger and younger and younger. Miller versus Alabama, Brian Stevenson basically debated with the Supreme Court about the legitimacy of prosecuting young offenders as adults, because they've outlived adult offenders twice their age. That arose to an issue of cruel and unusual punishment. The Supreme Court actually recognized that. That Miller case became the precedent for every other state to kind of follow suit when readdressing whether or not first-degreers or second-degreers should receive a life sentence, who were juveniles at the time, between the ages of 17 and lower. And Massachusetts came out with a case called Commonwealth versus Diachenko, which looked at not just the 8th Amendment, but also Article 26 of the Massachusetts State Declaration, and determined that, yes, they should follow Miller because it is supreme law, and that they was just going to deal with first degrees. But they never addressed all of those who were prosecuted and sent upstate as juveniles. So the question is not about the 8th Amendment, but more about the due process. Where did we find due process at when folks were supposed to intervene and say, hold on, we have a separate juvenile court to prosecute those offenders 17 and under? And this is not something that was started in Massachusetts. This was something that was universal going around at the time, nationally, on the heels of Hillary Clinton, who had called a bunch of us young juveniles as super predators that set the stage for this prosecution. And I would say this came out of a think tank somewhere, because when I spoke to older folks who were incarcerated, older Black men who had been in the system, they had knew 2 years in advance that this change was going to come. They had been told that in the next 2 years, they would see young offenders come to maximum security prison unprecedented, like they never saw before. And when they started to see my generation of young folks come in that way, it was just, to them, it was like, what? Because number one, you don't send 17 or 18-year-olds to maximum security prison. In this case, they sent us straight there with hardened criminals, and that was a volatile place. And what I would say, basically to send us off to our executions, so to speak. We've survived that, but what didn't survive is the decimation of our families as a result of that. The class of would-be potential earners that would have stabilized Black Boston. And then when you look at who's taking accountability for what happened, even though we're now coming back and addressing this, no one doesn't want to take no responsibility, because you have prosecuted a slew of children for decades. The courts did not have the authority to do that. They did not, and still do not have the authority to do that. Once something becomes the status quo of the way of operation in Massachusetts, well, defense attorneys and all of them treated alike. And that has been the problem in Boston. And when we talk about those structural barriers of mass incarceration, it wasn't just the Reaganomics, right, that created the environment when they decided to put drugs in the community, gave opportunity for guns in the community, that created the environment for us, and then promoted the gang style of life, because gangs did not exist in '89. This was something perpetuated by the media, who were coming to these little different blocks of ours and started asking us that, what gang are you from? What gang are you from? And we were saying, what gang? We ain't no gang. We just grew up on this block. We all from this one neighborhood. But we never fit the classical terms of gangs, because there was no hierarchy, there was no structures, there was none of that. This is what they began putting in our brain. And now, when you've been invisible for so long and you're looking for visibility, well, now some of these folks started playing to that hype, to that media sensation. And this is how you had the formation of gangs. So this is the recipe to how they set up these dynamics that led to then the prosecution side of ignoring the law and everybody turning their head to the law, and then actually stealing generations from us. I was locked up 33 years. There's folks who, if not for the work of Brian Stevenson, they would still be locked up, or they would be dying in prison. Some folks who served 40 years, some folks who served 20 years, 15 years, they're never getting that back. They done lost their family. Their family's been destabilized. Their sons and their children are now entering into the system because they didn't have the support. So they've been completely destabilized.
After hearing Mac's story, I couldn't help but think about the day I voted to legalize recreational marijuana in Massachusetts. Since then, a number of cannabis shops have opened in Massachusetts, and they've become very profitable. And upon hearing Mac's story, I couldn't help but think about all the people that were in prison because of marijuana. Most of those people are Black people, in particular, Black men. So I wondered, how did Mac feel about the fact that Massachusetts legalized recreational marijuana and people are making a lot of money off of it, but the state has not pardoned those who went to prison for marijuana?
I think personally it's consistent with the type of apathy, right, that they've had when it pertains to the Black community, because most of those convictions come out of the Black community. One of the ways that they've been able to kind of avoid that is by saying, hey, well, at least we're opening up opportunity for Black folks to actually benefit from these cannabis shops, while not really looking at the harm, right, that the conviction still causes to the individual. What we see is this inconsistency that's always the question when it surrounds Black folks or when Black folks are most impacted. Look how long it took for them to do the Annie Dugan situation, where Annie Dugan was tampering with drugs and they sent a whole bunch of folks to prison who may not have ever had drugs in the first place, right? But to rectify that, it took a court fight all the way up to the Supreme Court years later after her conviction to then say, we have to do something sweeping to come back and reverse all those cases. If we recognize that in that instance, why wouldn't we recognize the impact of marijuana convictions the same way? What we see is that there is a major reluctance to come back and repair that type of harm. One has to ask themselves, why? What is the purpose of maintaining something that is legitimized? You didn't do it for the prohibition, right? Once alcohol became legal, all the other convictions went away. You know, people were able to get that stuff off their record. What is the difference here? Black Boston and the Massachusetts legislators and everyone who's cognizant of these things talk about it in an academic way as if real people are not walking around who were impacted by that. And that is the number one problem. And when we talk about what equity looks like, what real equity looks like, and for us, first, cleaning our slates. All those folks who were impacted by being prosecuted in that way should automatically get those cases nullified or designated as juvenile offenses. And you know what that would open up to? That would mean then we would be open for state jobs. We would be competing for those same things. They had to create that environment to malign us early on so that we wouldn't be competing for those same jobs on the same scale as white communities. Being able to get these narratives out to show the constructs of these things is very important.
Yes, Boston is home to winning sports teams and elite universities. But there are two Bostons. These are the faces of the other side of Boston. The side of Boston tourists and transplants are less likely to see. They are fighting back against the displacement of Black residents, but they are not alone. Black residents are being displaced in cities throughout the United States. We have to apply pressure on corporations and city officials. Otherwise, we'll be erased.
Ball hard, no lesser. This dry mind, no Tesla. This whip glide like Dressler. Full court, I bring pressure. I bring pressure. I bring pressure. I bring pressure. I bring.
Okay. I know it's pretty heavy. I know the documentary can be pretty heavy. But I do have the editor here with me, Scott with me. I wanted to bring him on so you all can meet Scott because Scott did fantastic work.
Thank you. And yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed it. And yeah, thank you so much for bringing me onto this project and trusting me to edit for it, and thanks to all the Sabinators and Sabsters for your support in this project. And it's kind of surreal to see it all finally come together. And yeah, it's great.
I gotta tell you, the vision that I had for this project, I feel like you took it all the way to a level that I could have never imagined. And I just like for people who don't know, like Scott really took this to another level. The editing skills, like just gelling everything together, because there's a lot of people that were involved in this. Of course, the Franklin Park Defenders, shout out to them. Shout out to Antonia and Wawa. Antonia, I really appreciate you taking me around Boston and telling me your story. Everybody that was a part of this documentary, I appreciate you telling me your story. Eric and Corey filmed the interviews for the Franklin Park Defenders. I was there, but they handled the technical part of that. Corey also went and got B-roll a couple of times. I was going around the city every week getting B-roll, sometimes double parking to get like footage of certain places. Of course, I also don't want to forget illustrator Sophia, who was able to fill in and make some pictures for photos that I just could not find. That was the hardest part about this documentary, is there's not a lot of information about the history of Black Boston. Some of the older photos that you guys saw, I had to get license approval from the Boston Globe, because they own a lot of the busing photos. But Sophia for coming in and doing illustrations. Also Jesse, who is the colorist who made this really pop in a way that I couldn't have imagined. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody. Oh, of course, Yanti, who did the audio mix. She did a theater mix for audio, and she did a streaming audio mix. Like everybody that came together for this. But I gotta say, Scott, like I am thoroughly impressed, and I've enjoyed working with you. And I'm so happy that you came on for this project. And I sincerely hope I didn't annoy you sometimes, because I know sometimes I was like, why do I have to go film this again?
Oh, not at all. No. In the world of clients, you're like the dream client, like the hands down for real. Yeah, no, it was. Thank you so much for just trusting me and just take the ball and run with it. And it was a huge learning experience for me as well. Part of putting together things in the edit is, you have to go through all the footage, and part of that also was like we had the initial outline and we had the stuff with the Franklin Park Defenders and everything, and they were giving me clues, and they were saying things about redlining and urban renewal and stuff. I was like, well, it seems like to figure out how we get to the point of talking about the gentrification of today, that there's all these pieces that kind of come into play, historically. And so like that was part of what I really wanted to convey with this documentary, was just how did this all come together? And what's the story, and what are these terms, these bite-sized terms that people can employ in their everyday reality, as far as like, because it's not just Boston, obviously, this happens everywhere, and so, but going into the specifics and these stories and everybody's testimonial that they gave you for the project, and specific to Boston, and then using that sort of as a challenge to get down into the archival stuff. I take that as sort of a challenge, is how much can we find, a lot of stuff in the public domain too, which is always great. Digging through those digital archives, it's and then you find out a lot more there too. And honestly, sometimes it's just, I know we're just scratching the surface here, but part of the edit too is also boiling it down, and extracting the story from that. So I hope that was successful for folks, and that everybody enjoyed it.
Absolutely. And of course, a huge shout out to who I've never met, but he had I swear to God, his songs just fit this so perfectly. Wichita Slim, who is a rapper from Alabama. He's the one that made the intro song is called The Game. Shout out to Wichita Slim. And the ending song there is called Pressure. A different pressure than the one I play on this show sometimes. But Wichita Slim, I think his music just fit perfectly when we were looking around for songs to use. And of course, Scott Buckley, a lot of the moving music that you hear throughout the film, that's Scott Buckley's songs, which fit with this so perfectly. but which Wichita Slim, like that really, I knew I was looking for a trap beat, and I listened to so much stuff, and I was like, when I heard his songs, I was like, that is it. That's the sound that I want. So definitely shout out to him. If you guys don't know who he is, check him out on Spotify. His name is Wichita Slim. He's from Alabama. I thank you so much, Scott. Like, this all came together. I highly recommend you for people, you know, if you're making a documentary, I highly recommend Scott, because like I said, you really took this to the next level. When Scott did the first round of edits, I was totally fine with that. Like, I was like, oh yeah, this looks great. And then we'd meet again the next week and I'd see he added something else or switched things out. And like, you made it look so professional and on a way that I could have never done. I don't have those kind of skills. I just don't. And again, I just want to thank you so much. This is a bittersweet moment because now it's like,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, it's like it comes full circle, and you know, it's like it's part of the catharsis of the whole filmmaking process. Is, you know, it's like getting it all together, and then it seems like it's just so crazy until the final moments, and then you get it out, and then you send it out in the world, and then it just, you know, takes on a life of its own. And of course, I mean, perhaps there are film festivals in the future, but you know, it'll live on the net. And of course, everybody, when it comes out on Thursday, should go check it out again. You know, the 4K full res version. Send it around to your family so you can get some interesting Thanksgiving meal conversations going on about, you know, urban renewal and whatnot, you know. So, you know, maybe stir things up a little bit. You never know. Or maybe not. I don't know. But, you know, at least it'd be interesting.
Yeah, now it feels so weird of what I'm going to do with my time, because I was doing this, like getting B-roll and working with Scott along with, you know, still doing the show. And so it's, the summer was busy, put it that way, really busy for me. And but you made it so much better, because I know I could have never produced it to this level. And I really do appreciate that. Someone is trying to get in touch with you, Scott. Someone is asking, how can I reach Scott Hanshew?
Yeah. Well, you could go to scotthanshew.com. But yeah, if you just you can reach out to me through there. Also, just hit me up via email. Might be the easiest way. scottahanshew@gmail.com. And hopefully I'm not, you know, throwing that out there to the whole world there now, but that's all right. Yeah. Oh, well, there you go. That's there we go. Yeah, there's a website. Yeah, I suppose the film school, you know, it turned out for the best in the end. So and there's, of course, my door is always open. There's always more projects, more stories to be told, you know, and so I'm sure we can figure something else out in the future.
And I'll also say, I think you greatly understood this project because of where you're situated, like where you live. Like, you were very much familiar with the whole gentrification aspect. And I thought that was really, really, really important. So I'm so proud of this project. Guys, you'll be able to see the 4K version of this on Thursday. It'll be just the documentary, not a watch party. So that way you can share it with other people and they don't have to go through this live stream to see the documentary. But this has been so great. Like I said, it's such a bittersweet moment now because Scott and I would meet every Wednesday, for those of you who don't know. And so now it's like, I know we're going to be meeting, I think tomorrow, to talk about the film festival stuff. Yeah, because I'm going to try to submit it to film festivals as well. But it's like, going forward, like my Wednesdays are going to be like, it's weird.
You know, yeah, like I say, it's always bittersweet, but you know, I mean, the important thing is that, you know, the film did get done, and I mean, you'd be surprised in the filmmaking world how much stuff kind of gets stuck in limbo, and you know, it always comes together in the edit, right? And so it's like it can be difficult for films to actually get finished, you know, and so getting it finished in a you know, for a feature doc, a relatively short amount of time, honestly, was a sprint, you know. But a lot of that had to do with you trusted that, you know, I knew what I was doing, and that we could, you know, like I said, just take that ball all the way down the field. So yeah, I appreciate that so much, and that gave me, you know, kind of a little bit of a creative space, putting everything together to be like, well, I don't have to go back and forth about whether or not, you know, make this choice or not. And you know, there's stuff that ultimately did get cut out, but Not too much though, most of the stuff.
Yeah, that was another part that was tough about filmmaking, is that I didn't want to let go of anything. And Scott had warned me beforehand. He said, don't fall in love with like the way things are right now. Don't fall in love with all the footage, because we'll make cuts, as we go forward. And I was like, no, but yeah, but it all made sense. Like, in the end. And I just think that, yeah, I highly recommend you, Scott, for anyone making a documentary. I think your work has been like absolutely superb. Like, honestly, like the work that you did, I was like, Scott should be working for like major like studios. Like, I thought it was like phenomenal. I'm sure you probably don't want to do that.
Well, I mean, I rarely ever turn down work. But that being said, doing the indie doc thing, or just indie filmmaking in general, it does give you that sort of like creative freedom and leeway, and space to experiment. Whereas like studio driven stuff is a bit more regimented and in, separate, departments, and never the twain shall meet kind of thing. And as an editor for an indie doc, I mean, you almost end up doing almost everything. It was great this time around to like actually delegate a lot of the stuff and be able to hand stuff off. And for those last few steps with the audio, hand it off to colorists and everything, and then I just get to sort of just be able to give notes. That was great, So I like doing that too.
Yeah, and for those FYI, just recent updates, I am in talks with someone to try to do appearances at colleges and universities as well, about this documentary. So someone has already reached out to me about that. Someone's reached out about distribution. So, hopefully I can get this to other places as well. So just letting you guys know, we got to stand in ovation, Scott. When I showed this on Saturday at Roxbury Community College, like, we got to stand in ovation. And I was just so deeply like humbled. And I think what I want people to take away from this is that, number one, politicians have to be held accountable. And I think what we are all starting to see is that regardless of party, a lot of these politicians in the end look out for big business and big business interests, even at the displacement of people. And I think that's important. That's happening all across the country. And I will say this as well. Everything that happened to Black Boston, which is a story that you often are not told about, especially if you come here, I will send this warning to other people as well. Especially other people who are poor. And you're already starting to see this, I think. It's only a matter of time before they come after you too. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to protect big business. The goal is to protect the billionaires, the CEOs, etc., at the expense of the 99%. So they always start with one group and then they make their way to other groups. And we've seen this happen before in the past. So I think that that's what people really need to take away from this. And step forwards, like, these harms need to be rectified. These harms, need to be fixed. Like, it's just, it's crazy. Some people have already reached out and told me that they want to get Mayor Wu's attention about this, because they're like, whoa, you need to, fix this. Like, you're not really out there trying to help with the Black community. I mean, yeah, it's nice that New Edition got a street sign. That's nice. But people are being pushed out. Like, people are literally being, and there's a difference between, I want to say this with gentrification, there's a difference between being priced out and having the city literally take a wrecking ball to your building because they want to build something else there. So people have to learn from this, and I hope that's what happened. But Scott, thank you so much.
Thank you so very much, and thank you for your voice, and for what you're doing on your channel. And I'm just happy that I got to be a part of that and help bring the vision for this documentary, across the finish line. I mean, yeah, it's been wonderful.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So you guys finally got to see and meet Scott. So now you know who he is. And then we're going to do call in just a couple of minutes. Eric, if you want to hop on and read the super chats, And now you guys see like why I've been so busy. I've just been so busy. And now it's gonna be weird because I'm not gonna be busy. And I'm one of those people, like people are already asking me, what's the next movie? What's the next movie? Oh, we're dropping the beat. Oh, is that what you're asking me to do? Oh, okay. Sorry. I'll drop the beat here. Which beat am I dropping? I guess not pressure. I guess we'll do this one. Yeah. Hey, dance with me. Dance with me. Drop the beat in the street. Woo! All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad that you guys liked it. I really am. And again, check out Wichita Slim, man, for real. He got some really good songs. I like his style a lot. I like the way that he flows. Oh, the poll. Sorry, I almost forgot. Let's bring up the poll, Eric. Thank you. Okie dokie. Is there gentrification in your town or city? 1,600, a little over 1,672 votes. Is there gentrification in your town or city? 75% of people said absolutely. 16% said nope, and 9% said what's gentrification. Well, hopefully now, people know what gentrification is. But as you guys can see, the majority of the populace said that there is gentrification in their town or city. So it's happening everywhere. And yeah.
All right. I'll just say what everyone else in the chat and everyone else is saying. Awesome job, you and Scott and the whole team. I only did a little part, and yeah, and I also let's make sure people know about Franklin Park Defenders and their
I'll
website.
let you take this over here, Eric. I'm just gonna take a quick restroom break.
All right. I will do that thing. All right. Yeah. So make sure you're be aware. I'll put it in the chat again. The Franklin Park Defenders website. Now I got to find the link again. Oh, here it is. Right there. So if you're interested in what they're doing and want to help out, check out their website. And the one other thing I just mentioned quickly is if we have the question, sorry, I'm just finding the right thing here. Here we go. If we have the question too of like what do we do about all this? There is, I would say, check out 11. What I'm going to say is the thing that's really going to fix this is a mass movement powered by clear demands. Right. It's got to go back to fixing the government and the corruption. Can't talk about the corruption enough. It's at the bottom of all of this. And there's, I'm just bringing up the webpage. So if you go to 11demands.org, there is on there the concept of the 11 demand strategy. And I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but, start with the demands and go from there. This is on, the 11demands.org website. So, if you're seeing all this and feeling like, oh, well, I agree with all this, but what do we do about it? Well, there is a concept here, what we do about it. So, keep watching, check out 11 Demands, and, let's see what we can do about it and go from there. All right. In the meantime, we have got lots of chats built up. So let's check those out, those super chats and other chats. And some of these even go back to the Doordash story, which was shall we say, an interesting one. But thanks for the super chat, the Chisel Chipper, who says, here comes the Doordash GoFundMe. Oh, Jesus, I hear you. And thanks for this one, Matless, who says, I feel just as sorry for Doordash Girl as I do the guy you covered a few months ago that went to Tyler Perry's house and allegedly got, quote unquote, assaulted. Thanks for that. And thanks for the super chat, Roger Meadows, who says, Oswego, that was upstate New York, Sabrina. All right. And thanks for this one, Radicles, who says, congratulations, Sabby. I know how much passion you put into everything you do, so I'm so excited to watch this. Yes, this was a fun watch party indeed. And at one point, yeah, Janet asked, will we be able to share this in its entirety? Yeah, so keep an eye out on Thursday. There'll be the kind of the full 4K version of the documentary running as a clip and as a premiere. I think we'll even have the chat going again for that. And then once that drops, then you can give that link out to people and to say, check it out, the documentary. And if you don't want to wait, you can give them the link to the live stream and they can catch it on there too, even if you want. But the really good version will be released on Thursday. Thanks for the super chat. Fully laden swallow. Oh, I see what you're doing there. I get you. Who says excellent work, Sabby. I get the Monty Python reference. And thanks for the super. Oh, I already read that one. Yep. I want to say thanks for the super chat part of it, Sarah. And we did indeed drop the beat. Thanks for the kind words there. Thanks for the super sticker, Robey. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but that's all right. And thanks for this one, Where's the Love, for that kind super sticker. And also Carmen San Diego. Appreciate that. Oh, and the man, the legend, Walter Beasley says, nice, became a man in the bean. All right. Thanks very much, Mr. Walter. Thanks for the super sticker, Justice by Karma. Thanks for this super chat, Gene A, who says, black character in Peanuts named Franklin, use it. All right. And thanks for the super sticker, Cheetah. Appreciate that. And thanks for the super chat, No Thing 1111. Who says, congratulations, Sabby, great film. Thank you. And thanks for this very generous super chat from Focus, who says, I wonder if we were able to crunch the numbers of the, quote, white gentrifier and break it down by ethnicity and race, what kind of information we could get from that. I'm willing to bet we might find out that a certain group might have more than the rest of the whites. All right. And thanks for the super chat, Roger Meadows. He says, I don't know whether to I think we got cry emoji or angry emoji. I don't know whether to cry or rage, right? I think. And thanks for the super sticker, appreciate that. And thanks, Focus, as well, for this very generous super chat. Appreciate that. And thanks to Antonia Edwards for gifting Sabby memberships. Appreciate you. And thanks very much, Chioma N, for the super sticker. All right, see what else we got here in the queue. Thanks for this super chat, Money Making Bear, who says, excellent documentary, Sabrina. And thanks for this one from Wendell Scott. We have to be on a search and burn trajectory to oppose every political operative that is backed and monetarily supported by AIPAC. All or none. If we don't, we will have to contend with the shenanigans of Hakeem Jeffries too. Yeah, and that connects to the earlier story about Hakeem Jeffries and AOC and Mamdani and how they're all taking these positions like, oh no, we can't go against Hakeem because he's the party leader. And it really just shows you what the uniparty is all about. And this is why, so many of us, in this savvy space, in this, what you might call real left space. I don't know. You don't even seem to have good terms for any of this, but it's part of why we tend to, basically have a hard line that are just saying, we're not going to vote for, we're not going to support members, of either party anymore. And while, it's good to see all these things, happening in the chaos and the divisions, what these, current people, whether it's an AOC or a Mamdani or or Thomas Massey or MTG, what if they're really serious about all this, they can leave those parties, form something new, make it B for the 99%, not the top 0.1%, not the billionaires. They can call out the corruption relentlessly, and then maybe we'll start to F with them, right? But until then, you know, you're a member of a party that's complicit in genocide. So what do you expect us to do with that? All right. But this, of course, ties into the documentary and, you know, all this tonight because it's the same forces that get into it. I got one more. Let's see. One last one in the queue here. Thanks for this one. Sari Razman, who says, thank you, Sabby. Job well done. And that was certainly the sentiment, you know, in our queue and in our audience tonight.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. We are going to head on over to call in. So the link is already pinned at the very top of the chat. I'm going to go ahead and open the Zoom room while I'm here on the stream. All you do is click on that link, ladies and gentlemen. You click on that link. It may ask for the passcode, but it looks like it's not because people are already getting in here. So that link is pinned at the very top of the chat there if you want to join the call in. And if you want to speak, you'll have to, at the very bottom of the screen on Zoom, click that icon that says raise your hand. And that lets me know to call on you. And we'll go from there. I won't keep you guys too long because I know it's getting late. But looking forward to seeing you on there. And you can also join the call in if you go to sabbysabs2.com.
I'm just setting that up now.
If you come in a little bit later, because some people, you know, the live chat isn't available. Eric, once you join the Zoom, I will go ahead and make you a co-host.
All right. I'm just getting that Sabby Sabs link set up now.
And I just ask everybody to mute when you join the Zoom until we call on you. Thank you very much.
And I guess I should get in joining it myself. There we go.
All right.
A little raise.
All right, Eric, you're there. I'll go ahead and make you a co-host. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen,
right. I
we're
think we're
headed
good to
on
go.
over to call in. So I'll see you guys there. Have a good night. Thank you guys so much for the watch party with me. Have a good night. And you know how we do this. Keep up the fight.